The morning mist clung to the spires of the great sept of Baelor like damp gauze, softening the outlines of stone and gilded glass until the whole edifice seemed less a building than a breath held tight above King's Landing. Beneath its looming silhouette, the city stirred to uncertain life. Fishmongers lifted sea-wet baskets from sloops bumping at the quays. Bakers shoveled pale loaves into ovens that glowed like hidden dawns. Mothers leaned over wide-eyed children and whispered prayers that the day would pass without the tramp of armored feet or the toll of warning bells. The faith militant had been everywhere of late. Silent brothers in ruffspun and plated breastpieces, ravaged with 7-pointed stars. Grim sisters, bearing cudgels as readily as candles, their eyes bright with the fire of righteous purpose. They patrolled the cobbled lanes and stacked alleys, neither soldiers of the crown nor common watchmen, but something harder, something older, something that no royal decree could wholly leash once it had slipped free from memory into muscle and steel. High above the rushing veins of the city, young King Tommen knelt alone in the windowed solarium that jutted from Maegor's holdfast. Sun-painted glass threw ribbons of color across his cheeks, and the hues reminded him, absurdly, of sugared citrus slices the cooks used to serve on festival days. He tried to imagine their sweetness, tried to make his mouth water, but the taste of fear was thicker, metallic, clinging to his tongue no matter how many times he swallowed. 2 weeks had passed since his mother's arrest. Only 2 weeks, though each dawn crawled like a wounded thing, dragging hours behind it that felt endless. In that time, the small council had reshaped itself around him like a new, ill-fitting cloak. Staunch lords, half hostile to one another, all professing loyalty while they glared across the council table, like dogs calculating how much leash they had left. Outside, the king's sworn guards stood their silent vigil. Once, a dozen knights of the king's guard would have protected every threshold Tommen crossed. White cloaks gleaming, helms proudly bare to prove their honor. Now 3 only lingered, and their cloaks were stained ivory rather than brilliant white. The faith militant had insisted sworn brothers of the king's guard stand accused beside the queen until their frailties could be measured against the Seven's judgment. Those who refused were turned away from the temple of memory, urged to confess. Whether out of reluctance or convenience, most accepted the militant's authority and laid aside their vows in hope of lenience. Sir Balon. Swan alone remained at the king's side. He was stern and sorrowful, and spoke little, but Tommen was grateful for the familiar face behind that expressionless helm. The chamber door cracked open. Tommen rose, smoothing trembling hands against the velvet of his doublet. Lord Mathis Rowan, newly appointed hand, entered with purpose, carving lines into his already grave features. Behind him shuffled the Grand Maester, shivering beneath a mantle heavy with forgotten metals. And then came Sir Loras, gaunt yet unbowed, blue eyes flaring with some private vow. There was a time Tommen would have run to the knight, thrown arms around Loras Tyrell's mailed waist, and begged him to teach parry and riposte. That time lay buried now beneath the rubble of half-spoken charges and the stench of prison straw. Loras inclined his head but did not kneel. He waited at the rear, a sentinel out of place in a chamber meant for delicate matters of state. "My king," Rowan began, voice low and measured, "the High Septon requests audience in the throne room before midday." He would speak of reconciliation. Tommen's hands twitched. He folded them behind his back, as though a scolding septa still watched from the doorway. "Reconciliation," he echoed. The word sounded simple, almost soft. Yet it had driven every decision since the day the faith militant rearmed. Reconciliation meant kneeling beneath the glittering stare of the Seven. It meant confessing sins that weren't his, and surrendering crowns forged by valor and blood, and granting power to men who hid iron beneath hair shirts. It meant, above all, saving what fragments remained of his family. The Grand Maester cleared his throat, a papery, fluttering sound. "The High Septon rights of harmony between sword and scepter. He reminds your grace that a household divided cannot stand." Rowan's expression barely shifted, yet Tommen sensed disdain flicker like a shadow across the hand's eyes. "One might point out, Grand Maester, that it was the Sparrow's swords divided this household in the first place." Silence settled among them. Tommen glanced at Sir Loras, hoping the knight might smile and break the tension. But Loras's gaze was fixed on the window. Beyond it, the city lay sprawled, a many-limbed beast, stirring, unquiet, unsure which master to obey. At the edge of vision, the crowns of distant hills glimmered with morning heat. "My lord," Tommen said softly, "if we refuse him, will he free my mother?" Rowan inhaled, slow and deep, as though weighing the shape of each possible answer. "Refusal, your grace, would only harden his resolve. The High Septon believes the gods guide him. Obstacles to such men are signposts encouraging them that they walk the righteous path." Tommen pictured the High Septon, a stooped figure in unadorned robes, face half buried in a tangle of gray beard and fervor. There was kindness in the man's smile, yet that same smile had remained perfectly serene as Septa's shears hacked golden curls from his mother's head. The young king's knees weakened at the memory. He bit the inside of his cheek until the sharp sting steadied him. "I will receive him," he said at last. The words scraped his throat. "Tell Sir Balon to make ready." Rowan bowed. The Grand Maester shuffled forward to press a dry kiss to Tommen's hand, and when he withdrew, a faint scent of musty parchment clung to the air. Loras lingered a moment longer. He stepped close, bent at the waist until his lips brushed the boy king's ear. "Courage, your grace," he whispered. "Knighthood is not solely the realm of men grown tall." Tommen closed his eyes, letting that spark of warmth steady his hammering heart. When he opened them, Loras had gone. Only the streaming colors of the glass remained, bleeding across his shadow like spilled jewels. 3 tiers of marble steps scaled the throne room to the Iron Throne. Wrought from 1,000 blades, blackened with the reckoning of past wars, the seat loomed so high that even full-grown men looked small upon it. Tommen had always felt a shrinking dread when he climbed those steps, as though each footfall invited phantom kings to measure his worth against theirs. This morning, he felt not kingly, but perilously hollow, an eggshell with the chick still wet inside. Yet as Rowan led him forward, he pasted a calm mask across his features, mindful of every watching eye. The High Septon awaited, flanked by silent harriers of the faith Militant. Their armor bore neither sigil nor house colors. Dull steel caught shards of morning light and threw them back like warnings. Each harrier carried a cudgel carved in the likeness of the 7-pointed star. Such clubs had broken more than a few bones in recent nights among those who defied the new order. Tommen had heard rumors. Old men dragged from tavern corners, seamstresses hauled from spinning wheels, even septons of gentler persuasion forced to kneel along the street of seeds, while the harriers recited litanies at their backs like lashes. He prayed it was only rumor. The High Septon approached no closer than the foot of the dais. His robe was coarse, undyed, shapeless. Yet above that drab cloth burned eyes so fervent they could have lit wick ends. He bowed, not low enough to waste humility, yet not shallow enough to insult a king. Balance, Tommen thought, was the man's true weapon. "Your grace," the High Septon intoned. "The 7 smile upon your steadfast devotion. May their light pierce the fog of mortal doubt, trying to choke this great realm." Tommen tried to remember the responses Septa Moel had drilled into him. Words about mercy and the mother's grace hovered beyond grasp. He managed a nod. "You wish to speak of reconciliation?" "Indeed." The High Septon clasped calloused hands together. "The realm bleeds from old wounds. Wolves gnaw at the north. Ironborn raid the shore, and dragons, though young, circle the air in smoke-charred dreams. Yet all healings begin with confession. All peace takes root in humility." Rowan cleared his throat, but Tommen raised a hand. "What confession, High Septon, do you ask of me?" The man's beard quivered with something like pity. "Not of you, blessed child, but of this court, this city, this line of kings. Your mother stands accused of monstrous sins. Some whisper, falsely, one hopes that even your sire was tainted by secret abominations. These rumors rot faith. Only truth can cleanse." He paused long enough for every soul in the throne room to weigh that word. Truth, against personal bargains struck in darkened corridors. Let her stand trial beneath the Seven's gaze. Should she be righteous, She will be freed, and the faith shall kneel in pardon. Should she be unworthy, the realm will know justice served with a godly hand. Nendawanda. Tommen's breath caught. There were arguments he might make, plays for delay, for secular judgment, for leniency born of royal privilege, but each one slid away beneath the High Septon's unwavering gaze. He felt like a child again, kneeling before his tutor. Praying the page turned would be easy. He looked to Rowan, but the hand's jaw was clenched. To speak now would brand them all enemies of the faith. Very well, Tommen said softly. The trial will proceed, but I ask leave to visit my mother beforehand. So granted, the High Septon said at once, as though he had expected, and even hoped for that request. Bring your love, your grace. Forgiveness roots deepest in fertile soil. He bowed once more and turned. The harriers closed rank around him, withdrawing down the cavernous hall. Their footfalls echoed off vaults, and vanished beneath the heavy hush that fell in their wake. Tommen fought the urge to slump in relief. Only when the great doors clanged shut did he exhale. Rowan ascended 2 steps, voice low. The gods help us. He maneuvers like a Tyrell, but strikes like a stone crow's axe. Your grace, we must marshal allies before the faith cements rule. Who will ally with a boy whose mother stands trial for sin? Tommen whispered. The Queen of Thorns would, Rowan said, but his eyes flicked to the side where Sir Loras should have stood. The Kingsguard Knight had not been summoned for fear his presence would incite the High Septon. Absent allies felt thinner than cobwebs in a storm. Then summon her, Tommen said, though uncertainty twisted in his gut. Summon every lord who still names himself loyal. Rowan's mouth tightened. Loyalty now is measured in fear. One terror eclipses another, and men bow to whichever shadow has teeth at their throats. Tommen stepped down, head buzzing. Then we shall show them another shadow, one brighter, I hope. Down twisting stair and torchlit corridor they led him. To the cellars beneath the Sept of Baelor, where the scent of cold stone was laced with something dank and sour, like wilted flowers crushed beneath sandals at a grave. The faith sentries opened iron-banded doors without word. Lanterns guttered in narrow alcoves, illuminating barred cells beyond. Somewhere, a voice chanted weary prayers. Gentle Mother, font of mercy, guide my step, shield my soul, over and over, as if the speaker feared death's creeping nearness. Cersei Lannister rose from a stool when Tommen entered. Her once magnificent hair lay in shorn curls, barely brushing her nape. Stark shadows carved hollows beneath cheekbones that had dazzled a realm. Yet her eyes, lion's eyes, blazed brighter, stripped of vanity, and therefore of disguise. She crossed the cell in 3 strides and knelt, arms enfolding Tommen with fierce strength. My son, she whispered, kissing his brow. My sweet boy. Tommen clutched her thin shoulders, breathing her in. Straw, candle tallow, iron bars. Her scent was none of those. Memory supplied lavender soap and sun-baked stone from Casterly rock. Tears pooled, but he blinked them away. A king must not sob, not even before his mother. I have come, he said, voice trembling, to carry you home. Cersei drew back just enough to study him. Home is behind stone walls, darling. Different stones, different jailers. Do not barter your will to buy me freedom. That is no freedom. And no. He tried to explain the council's strategy. Alliances, demands, concessions. But words tangled. Cersei's smile, brittle and strangely peaceful, silenced him. They mean to use you, she said, brushing a curl from his brow. The High Sparrow dresses you as a lamb for the slaughter. He will guide your hand until it is his words that tumble from your mouth. And the realm will applaud, for you are pure and children speak no lies. But I am the king, Tommen insisted. I can decide. King by crown, she interrupted. But crowns are heavy, and you are still growing. Let wolves carry the weight until your shoulders broaden. Promise me that. He hesitated. Outside the cell, Harriet's sandals scuffed stone as they shifted watch. Tommen did not know how much time remained. If I do nothing, they'll condemn you. Then let them," she said, eyes glittering. "I would burn before I bend to their hypocrisy. But you, Tommen, you will live to reshape the realm. Hear me, gather their hopes like tinder. Let them believe you docile. Then, when the hour ripens, strike hard, as your grandsire would have done." Then now, the plan chilled him. His childhood memories of his grandsire, Tywin, were faint whiffs of saffron and saddle soap, footsteps echoing through halls that grew quiet before his approach. Yet Tommen saw in Cersei's face that same implacable iron. "I don't know how," he confessed. Cersei cupped his chin. "You will learn. The throne teaches swiftly, or it devours. Remember, every courtesy you grant the faith is a loan. Keep tally, and one day demand repayment, with interest." "Then Sental." She kissed him again, then guided him toward the bars before the harriers grew impatient. As the door clanged shut, Tommen steadied himself on the cold metal. He did not look back, afraid the sight would crack his resolve. He had come seeking courage. Instead, his mother had handed him a sword forged of promises and vengeance. Its edge was keen, its weight unfamiliar. Yet Tommen felt something ignite within, a spark born not of anger but of bone-deep necessity. When he emerged into the high court of the Sept, the High Septon awaited on marble steps. "Does your mother's spirit shine bright?" he asked. Tommen's answer was steady. "Brighter than fear, Holiness." The man's smile widened, but his eyes narrowed, measuring. "Then let us proceed, that her light may be judged in the fullness of day." Mid-afternoon, bells tolled across King's Landing. 7 notes, each distinct. Warrior, mother, smith, maiden, crone, father, stranger, rolling over rooftops like thunder. Citizens poured from doorways, some kneeling, others craning to glimpse the procession winding down the Street of the Sisters. At its center rode Tommen, small atop a tall gelding, flanked by harriers, and such Kingsguard as still wore white. Behind followed captives in rough spun. Cersei, head bowed yet unbroken. Sir Loras, wrists bound, Marguerite Tyrell, shoulders squared in defiance. The faith militant escorted them toward witness before the Seven. It was a scene reminiscent of ancient songs, though none who watched seemed certain whether it heralded redemption or ruin. From a latticed balcony, Lady Olenna Tyrell observed. Fingers curled around her cane so tightly the knuckles blanched. At her side, Mace Tyrell babbled anxieties, but Olenna's gaze never left the boy king's face. She saw fear there, yes. What child would not tremble? But she saw also a brittle determination that might, in time, harden to steel or shatter like stained glass. Back at Maegor's Holdfast, ravens took flight in quick succession. Messages inked with Rowan's seal sped north and south, east and west, calling banners under the guise of royal decree. Most lords would open those scrolls with a snort, for the realm had grown weary of calls to arms. Yet each letter bore a second missive penned in the cramped hand of the High Septon. Within, promises of absolution gleamed like hidden coin. Join the faith's blessed crusade, safeguard the young king's virtue, and earn not only salvation but authority greater than any crown. Some lords tossed aside the royal letter and read only the Holy One. Thus the lines of power began their slow, inevitable shift. That night, the small council convened in uneasy quiet. Candle flames jittered, as though the air itself quaked. Lord Rowan unrolled maps upon the long table, his finger tracing borders where the faith reported new converts armed and eager. "They swell each day," he warned. "If we wait until their ranks encircle the city, we shall find ourselves besieged from within." Across from him, Pycelle coughed wetly. "Perhaps," the Grand Maester wheezed, "we should embrace this tide. The gods favor those who bend the knee." Rowan slammed a palm upon the table. "Spare me platitudes. The realm already bends, near to breaking. Rivers of ink can no longer plug wounds wrought by fanatic swords." "None?" Sir Kevin Lannister folded his arms. He had returned that morning, called by urgent raven, but so far sat quiet, studying each voice. At last he spoke, low, and regretful. The faith cannot be fought by force. Not yet. The commons see them as shield against highborn cruelty. Cut one harrier down, and 10 more rise, each with a grieving mother eager to avenge her martyred son. Tommen listened, perched at the head of the table. Then what weapon remains to us? Time, Kevin said. And stories. Rowan frowned. Stories? Kevin leaned forward. We remind the realm whence the faith's blades came. The faith militant was broken once before, under Jaehaerys Targaryen. 4,000 died in the streets before the Starry Sept surrendered. We let the small folk taste a glimpse of that bloodshed, not by our hand, by the faith's own zeal. When innocent lives falter beneath righteous cudgels, hearts will shift. Sacrifice our people for sympathy? Rowan muttered. Kevin's eyes hardened. Better a few than tens of thousands. War is coming one way or another. The question is how long we can shape its field. Now. Tommen stared at the flickering map. Valleys, rivers, mountains. Each line seemed to pulse with whispered prayers and unshed tears. He remembered his mother's words. Tally courtesy as loans. Very well. He would lend the faith his crown, his posture, his silence, for now. But he would count each bruise and cry that echoed down the alleys. Each tear of a mother kneeling over a broken child. When the ledger overflowed, he would collect. Days passed in a quiet louder than any riot. Garrisons reported no banners moving on roads, yet tavern gossip carried rumors of farmers pledging fields to the warrior, of hedge knights polishing chipped stars upon battered shields. The High Septon addressed crowds thrice daily from the steps of the Septi, sermons woven with gold thread. Mercy, justice, salvation. Between every third plea for peace, he planted seeds of suspicion, against golden lions who devoured coin, against roses that grew thorny with greed, against dragons that breathed foreign fire. Listeners nodded. Many wept. Some knelt in spontaneous fervor. These conversions the harriers recorded. Names inked into ledgers for reasons never clearly stated. Tommen kept to the Red Keep. He walked halls echoing with footfalls no longer muffled by thick carpets. It was said extravagance offended the Seven. Tapestries depicting Targaryen conquests were taken down for cleaning that never seemed to end. In their place hung plain banners of sand-colored wool, each stamped with the star. The king tried to adjust, but every change felt like a subtle theft. He thought often of his brother, Joffrey, and how easily the former king would have commanded catapults to level the Septi. Tommen did not envy Joffrey's cruelty, yet sometimes he envied that certainty of action. One evening, while dusk bruised the sky purple, Tommen slipped from his chambers and climbed a narrow stair seldom used, emerging on a parapet that overlooked the gullet. A cool breeze tugged his cloak, carrying scents of brine and smoke. Below, torchlines traced the streets, harriers on patrol. Their helmets glimmered like insect eyes. A whisper of anger stirred within him. Unfamiliar yet not unwelcome. He was tired of being small under glass. Tired of handing kindness to men who offered smiles sharpened on both edges. Footsteps approached. Ser Balon Swan appeared, helm tucked beneath his arm. Your grace should not wander unescorted. Tommen smiled wearily. Have the faith declared wandering a sin yet? A child's humor, Balon said, though his eyes softened. But a king's courage. Your grace, your mother's trial begins tomorrow. Are you prepared? No, Tommen admitted. Tell me something, Ser Balon. Would you break your vows if the gods commanded you? Thou. The knight considered. The Seven are silent to me. My vows are words I spoke aloud. I obey the voice I heard. Tommen looked back over the city. Then stay near me, Ser Balon. I need voices I can trust. I will not leave your side. Swan vowed, setting helm back upon his head. By my honor and the crown's. Morning came sharp with restless wind. The great Septi's interior hummed like a hive. Whispers, rustles, soft metals clinking as faith brothers assembled. Benches filled with nobles and commoners alike, united by morbid curiosity. At the center of the nave stood a circular dais ringed by sconces of purest crystal. The accused would mount that dais one by one, bare feet upon chill marble. Above them, high in the dome, colored glass depicted the seven gazing down. Patient judge, gentle mother, stern warrior, and stranger veiled in uncertainty. Cersei was led forth first. She wore the same threadbare garment issued by the Militant. Yet, she moved with the poise of a lioness in chains. Shoulders squared, chin high. A murmur rippled as she stepped onto the dais. The High Septon raised his hands. "Cersei of House Lannister, Queen Mother, you stand accused." And a litany followed. Adultery, kingslaying by poison, consorting with dark arts, theft from the realm, murder of kin. Each charge struck like hammer on anvil, forging a cage of words. Cersei listened, face unreadable. When asked how she pled, her voice rang through the sept. "I am innocent of all crimes." No tremor, no plea. Testimonies ensued. Shivering novices recounting midnight sins, minor lords nursing old grudges, even a groom who claimed he'd seen the queen slip barefoot through gardens at ungodly hours. Some statements contradicted, but the High Septon did not press. Contradictions, like sparks, only lit greater flames in the zealous. At dusk, proceedings paused. Cersei was led away unbowed. Sir Loras came next, gallant even in rags. He confessed to laying with men but denied treason, denied harming the realm. Marguerite Tyrell followed, voice strong, claiming ignorance of her brother's liaisons and protesting loyalty to the crown. Each denial fed the faith's resolve. For in their doctrine, only confession cleansed sin. Thus refusal confirmed guilt. Tommen sat through it all. Above him, carved angels glimmered, but he felt no comfort. The sparrow's eyes burned into him whenever he shifted. He wondered how many judged, not Cersei but him, whether he would obey gods or blood. As the final bell of the day tolled, the High Septon addressed the congregation. "Tomorrow we shall conclude. The Mother's mercy remains open to those who bear truth." His gaze flicked to Tommen. "Pray this night, your grace. The realm's deliverance sits upon your lips." That night, Rowan found Tommen at a writing desk littered with half-finished quills. "Letters?" the hand asked. "To every High Lord," Tommen whispered, without looking up. "Invoking ancient laws of sanctuary. A king's right to guard his blood. You believe they will stand against the faith?" "They must," Tommen said, though doubt ached. "If they will not ride for their king, then I have no kingdom left." Rowan placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "Right. But right as a lion roars." Soft words hide sharper claws. The second day of trial dawned, grim and gray. Rain dotted the sept's high windows, running like tears across stained glass saints. The nave filled again, heavier with anticipation. Some prayed the spectacle would end in catharsis. Others hoped for blood. All sensed the realm balanced like a coin upon a thumbnail, poised to flip. Cersei was called once more. The High Septon addressed her gently, as though speaking to a stubborn child. "Confess, and the Mother's arms shall embrace you." She met his gaze. "I will walk through fire before I crawl." A flicker of regret passed across the High Septon's weathered face. He turned to the assembly. "Then let the seven judge." His hand rose. Harriers stepped forward. Tommen rose too. "Stop!" The shout echoed, startling ravens from rooftops beyond. In that instant, every face turned toward him. Harriers, nobles, small folk, his own council. He felt their scrutiny like hot coals. But he did not falter. "The law of sanctuary," he declared, voice cracking then firming. "By right of kings I invoke it. My mother shall be returned to the Red Keep under guard until royal inquest is complete." He had rehearsed the words through sleepless hours, coaching each syllable to stand tall. Murmurs surged. The High Septon's brow furrowed. "Your Grace, the faith answers only to the seven. No earthly crown eclipses divine will." Then let the crown rise beside the seven," Tommen pressed. "My mother will stand trial, but not here. The throne will sit in judgment alongside the gods." Rowan stepped forward, brandishing a scroll. Precedent exists. King Baelor once presided over a heresy trial, sharing authority with the High Septon. We merely seek that balance. The High Septon's eyes narrowed to slits of torchlit anger. King Baelor fasted 40 days before judgment. Will you starve, child, to prove your purity? She. If required, Tommen breathed, though terror seized him at the thought. But first, sanctuary. A hush fell, heavy with expectation. At last the High Septon inclined his head. Very well. Sanctuary is granted for one night. At sunrise we reconvene, and the gods shall speak through fire and flesh. The words felt more threat than concession, yet Tommen forced a grateful nod. Harriers unlocked fetters, and Cersei was led away under Kingsguard escort. She did not glance back, but Tommen saw the slightest lift of her chin. A salute, perhaps, to his fledgling defiance. Outside, thunder growled. Rain hammered the city in earnest, sluicing alleys, pounding rooftops. Streets cleared as folk hurried to shelter. Beneath that deluge, Tommen rode, cloak sodden, mind whirling. He had gained a single night. A night to plan, to pray, to turn whispers into swords. Yet even as the Red Keep's gates closed behind him, he sensed eyes watching from shadows. Sparrows nesting where rats once scurried, waiting, patient. The Faith Militant had ceded one step, but drawn another line, sharper and nearer. Dawn would bring reckoning. What shape it took rested upon a boy's shoulders, fragile yet unyielding. In his chamber, candles burned low. Maps and letters cluttered the table. Rowan paced like a caged wolf. Kevin muttered curses. Sir Balan adjusted plate and checked edges of blades. Outside, bells told the stranger's hour. Tommen stared at the Iron Throne through the open door of the hall beyond. Its dark silhouette rose against torchlight, blade tips gleaming like 1,000 accusing eyes. He crossed to it. Slow, deliberate. Each step rang hollow on the tile. When he reached the base, he did not climb. Instead, he laid a hand on cold iron, feeling history's chill seep into his palm. So many kings had sat, had ruled, had fallen. It seemed madness that this heap of weapons forged in fire and crowned by defeat should decide the fate of millions. Yet tomorrow it might, once more. Tommen closed his eyes and whispered not to the seven, but to the figures whose shadows haunted every blade. Aegon, Jaehaerys, Aerys, Robert, Joffrey, Tywin. He asked nothing. He promised nothing. He simply acknowledged them, ghosts and giants, and accepted that their weight would forever press upon him. Then he turned away, back to the council chamber, to the work that must be done before dawn. Behind him the throne remained, black and silent, its promise of power as cold as ever, and just as irresistible. Night's last watch crept on. Within the Red Keep, quills scratched, swords were sharpened, armor buckled. Ravens fluttered restless on perches, sensing the storm beyond the storm. At the heart of it all, young King Tommen stood before a gilt mirror, adjusting the simple circlet upon his brow. No jeweled crown tonight, Rowan advised humility. Yet the circlet shone enough to catch candlelight, sending sparks across the boy's features. He looked older, he thought, though he knew age did not come in hours. Still, something had shifted. Perhaps it was resolve, perhaps folly, but it was his. He stepped onto the balcony above the courtyard. Rain had slowed to drizzle, leaving puddles that reflected torch flares. Beneath, knights of the Kingsguard assembled in 2 lines. Only 5 remained in white armor, but they stood tall. Opposite them waited a dozen harriers, stone-faced. Between those lines, Cersei stood, wrists bound in front but unbent. As Tommen descended, silent anticipation thickened the air. He reached his mother, and without waiting for a signal, drew a dagger, small, ceremonial, its pommel shaped like a lion. Carefully, he cut the rope binding her. When the last strand fell, he sheathed the blade. "Your Grace," a Harrier commander said warningly. Tommen faced him. "She is under my protection." Sanctuary was granted. "I will see it honored." The commander's jaw clenched, but he stepped back. The king's guard closed around the king and queen mother. Together, they walked across the courtyard toward safety of the holdfast. The gesture was small, yet those who witnessed it would remember. A boy protecting his mother with naught but words and a short blade in the presence of men sworn to a higher cause. Inside, Cersei squeezed Tommen's hand once before attendants guided her to chambers prepared. Tommen turned to Rowan. "Send the ravens again," he commanded. "This time to Dorne, to Riverrun, to the Eyrie. Tell them what they saw tonight." Rowan bowed. Something like pride warming his stern face. "At once, Your Grace." And so, as candles waned, and dawn's first light crept over storm-washed rooftops, word began to spread, quiet as rumor, bright as breath. It spoke of a lion cub who roared beneath the Seven's gaze. Some scoffed. Some smiled. Some frowned in calculation. Yet all listened, for in a realm trembling under fanatic banners, any whisper of another path sounded like hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. Beyond that fragile dawn waited a day heavy with judgment. The trial's resumption, the High Septon's verdict, the faith militant's patience at its thinnest edge. And woven through, invisible but tightening, threads of loyalty and betrayal, of fear and faith, of steel and prayer. The game for Westeros' soul had only just begun, and every player knew the stakes. Should the faith triumph, crowns would gild altars. Should the crown resist, swords would stain septs. Somewhere between lay the hearts of a people who wanted merely to live unbroken. But for the space of a breath, that lingering hush before sunrise, King Tommen stood upon a balcony overlooking a courtyard still glistening from rain. He inhaled deep, tasting damp slate and distant sea, and the faint perfume of crushed lavender lingering in corridors behind him. He exhaled, and his breath drifted like mist, fading into the pale light swelling at the horizon. He did not know if his courage would hold. He did not know if his mother would live. He did not know if Westeros could balance sword and star without cutting itself apart. Yet he felt, for the first time, the faint rhythm of destiny beating not above him, but within, quiet, persistent, waiting for his next heartbeat to answer. He turned from the dawn and walked back into Maegor's Holdfast, where councils brooded and ravens wheeled, where his childhood lay discarded like a toy in shadowed corners. The doors closed behind him, leaving the courtyard empty, save for puddles that mirrored a brightening sky. In those mirrors, gray clouds parted, revealing a sliver of rose-gold sun, fragile as promise, sharp as prophecy, fleeting as mercy in the age of zeal. Oh, ha! The dawn broke pale and bruised. The horizon hued a faint mauve that looked almost hesitant to announce the day. In the highest turret of Maegor's Holdfast, Tommen found sleep had slipped from him like a discarded cloak. He stood in a linen nightshirt, barefooted on frost-cool tiles, and watched King's Landing stretch awake beneath the thinning veil of storm clouds. Rainwater glimmered in every gutter and pooled on every shingle, turning the ramshackle roofs of Flea Bottom into imperfect mirrors that trembled whenever a gull flitted across the sky. From here, the city seemed so fragile, its maze of lanes and markets a child's scrawl on a slate that a careless elbow might erase. Yet in that fragile web lay power, raw, unyielding, newly seized by hands calloused with fervor. Behind Tommen, the hearth coals muttered and shifted. Rowan had taken the adjoining chamber for what little rest he permitted himself, but the hand snores were quiet and fleeting. Soon he would rise, don official garb, and marshal the council for another game of pieces across maps inked heavily with doubt. Tommen wondered if Rowan dreamed of peaceful harvests in the arbor, or of armored sparrows pressing pitchforks to a farmer's throat. Perhaps the same nightmare cloaked them all these days. A knock, soft but urgent, rattled the door. The king turned, tugged a robe over his nightshirt, and bid entry. Sir Balan Swan stepped through, helm tucked beneath one arm, damp hair clinging to his brow. He had clearly come straight from the walls, in the pre-dawn drizzle. "Your Grace." Riders approached from the south gate. His voice carried an energy that flickered between caution and hope. 2 Tyrol banners, escorted by household knights. Lady Olenna herself leads. Tommen's pulse leapt. So swiftly. She must have pushed their horses hard through the night. She wears neither mourning black nor warplate, Balin added. Only travel cloak and cane. It may be parley. Rowan, roused by the voices, emerged fastening his doublet. Silver hair unplaited. The Queen of Thorns wastes as little time as she does breath. Let us greet her before the High Sparrow's men seize that opportunity. Tommen nodded, pulling on hose and boots, while a page fetched doublet and circlet. Thought hammered behind his eyes. Lady Olenna's arrival might tip scales either way. She could strengthen his stand or deliver him, trimmed like a bouquet, into the faith's hands for bargain. Yet instinct whispered that she did not travel in rain at her age merely to genuflect before zealots. Moments later, they descended spiral stairs into the outer yard. The drizzle had settled into mist, turning torchlight to golden blurs. Soldiers of the gold cloaks, more gaunt now than disciplined, shuffled aside as the royal escort crossed toward the barbican. Balin marched ahead, white cloak streaming like a tattered banner in the damp wind. Beyond the gatehouse stood a small procession, a pair of green and gold battle standards drooping. Half a dozen knights in mud-spattered mail, and at their fore Lady Olenna Tyrol, perched upon a dun palfrey. A plain woolen mantle wrapped her shoulders, but a sapphire brooch glinted at her throat, proud as any gauntlet. When she dismounted, 2 sworn shields rushed to lend arms. She shooed them away with a curt flap of her gloved hand. "Your Grace." Her cane's ferrule clicked against wet stone as she bowed. "Forgive an old woman the hour, but I feared the faith might hoard daylight if I tarried past sunrise." Tommen stepped forward. "Lady Olenna, your presence honors the crown. Please come within. The corridors are warmer than the weather." She inclined her head, unreadable eyes skimming Balin, then Rowan, then the ragged ranks of city watch atop the walls. "Warm corridors are precisely why I've come. Rain seeps less under high roofs." Inside the keep's receiving hall, servants hurried to set logs blazing and bring mulled wine spiced with cloves. Olenna ignored the offered cup until she had seated herself in a straight-backed chair beside the hearth. Only then did she sip, wrinkling her nose at the sting of cinnamon. "Your letters reached me," she said, voice low but sharp. "Both of them. The one sealed with a lion's head and the other rumored to bear 7 points." Her gaze fixed on Rowan. "I mislike riddles, sent in twos. They tend to hide the truth between them, like a pea beneath stacked mattresses." Rowan folded his hands. "The second letter came not from us, my lady, but from the High Septon. We presumed transparency required sending both." "Transparency?" she repeated, tasting the word as though it were oversalted stew. "Mace speaks of transparency when he wants another tower added to Highgarden. You will forgive me if the word pricks my skin." "Still, I rode north faster than prudence advises, so perhaps you succeed where my son fails." Tommen perched on the chair's arm, meeting her gaze. "I prayed you would counsel me, Lady Olenna. The faith grows stronger each hour. Yesterday I invoked sanctuary, but dawn may demand more than words. Now." And dawn," she murmured, "has an appetite. It devours shadows but also truth, for truth skulks often in darkness. Tell me, Your Grace, do you intend war?" The question hung in timbered stillness. Tommen felt its weight settle across his shoulders. "War?" Spoken plainly. Finally, He imagined banners streaming, steel ringing, streets running red. He imagined himself astride a destrier, voice cracking as he shouted orders older than his lifetime. The vision turned his stomach. "I intend balance," he answered at length. "I intend that no one power hold the hearts of the realm hostage, neither crown nor sept. War might come despite that, but I would not call it lightly." Olenna's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Good. Kings who thirst for war seldom sip victory with clean lips. Yet there may be times when war, like a bitter tonic, is the only draught that purges fever. You must be ready to drink." She drew from her sleeve a rolled parchment. "The reach still blooms, despite winter's edge. I bring 50 riders only for speed, but 10,000 canter behind me across leagues of field and stream. If roses must bear thorns, we will. The sparrow counsels humility. I counsel survival. Tell me where you stand, and the reach will stand likewise." And Rowan leaned forward. "If the faith perceive roses entwined with lions, they will brand both unrighteous." "Child," Olenna said dryly. "They branded the roses unrighteous the moment Marjorie refused to confess crimes she did not commit. We are enemies already. I prefer the courtesy of declaring it." Tommen exhaled. "Then we stand together. But I beg that swords remain sheathed until I exhaust every peaceful path." Bah. "Peaceful paths grow narrow under heavy tread," Olenna warned. "But so be it. I will pitch my tents outside the city, south of the Dragon Gate. We will drill, we will display banners, we will sing, and we will wait, for your signal or for the sparrow's lash, whichever beats upon our patience first." She tapped her cane, rising. "Now fetch breakfast worth chewing. Road bread sits in my belly like gravel." Balin gestured for servants. As they hurried off, Rowan escorted Olenna to guest apartments in a flanking tower. Tommen remained by the fire, hands clasped, watching embers collapse into orange dust. Hope, he realized, could take many shapes. A mother's fierce admonition, a knight's silent promise, an old woman's thorny pragmatism. It flickered, but it endured. Before long, a page announced the High Septon's envoy at the outer gate, requesting audience with the king prior to the trial's resumption. Tommen straightened, drawing breath until lungs ached. If hope endured, so did peril. The envoy proved to be a brother justiciar named Oswick. Gaunt as a winter branch, he bowed stiffly in the throne room, star-embossed cuirass still streaked with recent rain. "His High Holiness greets your grace in the Mother's mercy," Oswick intoned. He would inquire if sanctuary remains your will. "It does," Tommen answered, voice echoing across cold stone. "The crown will sit with the seven to judge truth." Oswick's pale eyes flickered to the Iron Throne, then returned. "The High Septon is a humble man, yet he foresees unrest should temporal power appear to silence divine verdict. He implores your grace to consider a trial by faith alone." And Rowan stepped beside the throne's base. "Your master was content with balance last eve. Why recoil from it at dawn? A child of light need not share bed with shadow," Oswick replied evenly. "But I shall carry your words. May the Father judge them kindly." When he left, Rowan sighed. "They test your spine, measuring whether steel or straw fills it." Tommen descended the dais and paced. "Let them test. Steel sings sweeter under strain." The court prepared for procession anew. Queensguard donned pale cloaks. Harriers awaited beyond the gate, their number doubled. Tommen noticed fresh recruits among them, young men whose armor still bore a smith's chalk marks, eyes wide with zeal tinged by fear. Even within a single night, the faith had swelled ranks. Rain returned as a soft patter, while the entourage wound through streets toward the sept. Citizens watched from under awnings or huddled beside braziers, whispers rising. Tommen heard fragments. Talk of Lady Olenna's arrival, conjecture that Highgarden's harvest might feed the faithful or fight them, rumors of Dornish spears stirring too. Rumors, like seeds, needed little soil to sprout. At the Sept of Baelor, torches flamed brighter than before, as though the seven themselves breathed upon them. The nave was packed shoulder to shoulder. Tommen took his place upon a modest seat to one side of the dais. Opposite reclined the High Septon upon a carved dais of white oak. Between them burned a brazier whose coals glowed almost blue. The Queen Mother was led forth. Cersei's wrists were unshackled now. Sanctuary forbade chains within holy walls. Yet 4 harriers shadowed her steps, as though invisible fetters bound body to blade. The High Septon raised both arms, voice sonorous. The Mother shines upon us, and the Father weighs our hearts. Today truth will blossom, watered by confession and stripped of vanity. He faced Cersei. Do you now confess your sins? She regarded him with eyes diamond hard. I confess only this, that I love my children beyond law or reason, and I would die before I betray them. A communal sigh shivered through the crowd. Admiration from some, derision from others. The sparrow nodded. Love is virtue when guided by humility, but sin when it enslaves the soul. Nonetheless, mercy endures. The warrior and the smith have forged a path whereby even the proud may prove innocence. Will you face them in trial by combat? Tommen's stomach lurched. He had not foreseen this gambit. Trial by combat had been outlawed by faith centuries ago, then resurrected in times of desperation. The High Septon now offered it like poisoned honey, gifting Cersei the illusion of choice. Cersei's mouth twisted. And who shall champion me? My brother, the one your guards hunt like a stag. My sworn swords, the ones you imprisoned. She spread her hands. Name a champion allowed to draw breath inside these walls, and I shall gladly watch him slaughter yours. A murmur skittered. The sparrow's calm did not waver. Sir Loras Tyrell poses martial prowess and claims unwavering love for your daughter by marriage. Will you accept his sword? Choose my daughter's brother to defend me. You mock us both. She lifted her chin. I refuse. Refusal, the sparrow intoned, leaves but one way. He turned, gesturing. 2 septas approached carrying a clay pot inscribed with runes older than the faith Militant. They placed it inside the brazier. Blue flames lapped its belly. The High Septon addressed the assembly. Wildfire distilled and sanctified. The stranger's kiss. His eyes glittered in torchlight. Walk barefoot through its flame, Queen Mother. And should you emerge unscathed, the 7 themselves will have absolved you. Gasps rippled, louder than thunder. Even Rowan stilled. Horrified. Trial by wild flame was a relic of age of heroes' tales. Scorned and banned, Tommen half rose, heart hammering so loud he feared all could hear. Cersei remained motionless. Only her eyes flicked to the pot, reflecting ghost green fire. You would immolate a queen to prove righteousness? He answered softly. The flame judges all equal, beggar or crowned head. Tommen found his voice. No, I forbid it. The hall fell hushed. He stepped into open space between his seat and the dais. You swore sanctuary at my word. You swore to share judgment with the crown. I will not see my mother burned. The High Septon turned slowly. Your grace, you invoked sanctuary for a single night. Sunrise ended its veil. Now stands the day of reckoning. Would you revoke justice out of filial love? I would ensure justice is justice, Tommen replied, forcing each word past the iron ring in his throat. Trial by flame is tyranny of fear. The crown denies it. Bah! From the nave's margins, a voice shouted. Traitor king! Another cried. The boy denies the 7. Shouts snowballed. Curses. Prayers. Pleas. Harriers lowered cudgels, forming cordons. Rowan strode beside Tommen. Holiness, the king speaks rightly. Such spectacle will provoke riot. Already the streets churn. The High Septon's face remained unflinching, yet his eyes roved crowd and balcony, calculating. At last he lifted a hand. Very well. The flame is withdrawn, for now. The Septus removed the pot. The brazier's hue returned orange. The sparrow's gaze locked upon Tommen. But you, sire, must answer a question. Do you accept the seven as highest in this realm? Tommen's tongue felt numb. He sensed the trap. Deny, and he blasphemed. Accept, and he admitted subordination to the faith. He breathed once. Slow. I accept that the seven guide our souls, but kings guard our bodies. Souls and bodies must stand together. Thus I share rule with the gods, not yield it. Silence crashed like a wave. The sparrow studied him, then smiled. A gentle, pitying curve. So speaks a child fond of riddles. The gods prefer plain words. We shall give you time to learn them. The trial is suspended till moonrise. Consider your stance carefully, your grace. The mother's patience is wide, but not endless. Nah. He gestured. Harriers escorted the accused away. The congregation spilled outward into storm-soaked streets, tongues wagging with new scandal. Tommen felt as though invisible strings tethered him to every whisper, pulling him near to breaking. Balin guided him out a side door, through cloisters slick with rain. Rowan followed, strides long, face dark with thought. In the litters back to the Red Keep, Rowan spoke first. Hey, gambles, you will flinch at thought of flame. And he is right. A riot would ignite the city if wildfire is loosed. We cannot permit it. Tommen hugged arms around himself. They cheer him. They call him the voice of the seven. They cheer whoever promises deliverance, Rowan said. But promise them bread, and they cheer louder. Old wisdom, empty stomachs holler for faith till full. Balin leaned from the opposite seat. Wildfire stores in the Ares vaults still line the bowels of King's Landing. If the High Sparrow acquires even a barrel, Rowan's jaw flexed. Then the city becomes our mother's funeral pyre. They arrived at the keep to find Lady Olenna in the council chamber, reading dispatches by candlelight. She looked up. Sharp gaze slicing anxiety from the air. I heard shouts half a league away. What mischief now? Rowan briefed her in terse lines. Olenna's fingers drummed the table. Trial by flame? The sparrow's ever more theatrical. Very well, if he intends drama. Let us upstage him. She turned to Tommen. Recall your namesake, Tommen the Prudence, who ended the Fourth Dornish War by hosting a feast for both armies at his camp border. You shall host your own feast, but the guests will be every highborn youth sworn to both faith and crown. Invite squires of pious houses, novice septons of noble blood, daughters pledged to silent sisters. Seat them beside Free City envoys, Dornish diplomats, men of Bravos who lend coin. Announce charity, unite multiple debts. The sparrow cannot torch such a gathering without scorching every purse string in the realm. Ma'am? Rowan folded arms. It risks spies. We are already riddled with spies, Olenna snapped. Better to herd them under one roof where you control the meal and the message. And you, king, shall stand at table's head to pray. Yes, pray, with utmost humility. Prove you honor the seven as guide while refusing their chain. Damn, Tommen considered. It may buy time. Time enough, she insisted. To ferry your mother from the city. Rowan arched a brow. Smuggled. Escorted. Olenna tapped her cane. Under pretext of pilgrimage. The faith cannot question pilgrimage without unmasking their own hypocrisy. Cersei journeys to the Crones, sept at Duskendale. Your Queen's Guard and Tyrell riders accompany. By the hour they note her absence, she will be behind oak doors thicker than the sparrow's Bible. Tommen's pulse quickened. And if he discovers deceit, then he must breach Duskendale, seat of the Hollards restored, and risk another rebellion. Too many fronts thin even righteous cause. She looked to Rowan. Will you draft invitations? Rowan nodded slowly. It may work. The feast must be tomorrow, before the sparrow sets another trap. Tonight, Olenna corrected. Delay is no friend. Balin exhaled. We need provisions, cooks. My quartermasters know larders, Olenna said. Highgarden never travels light. Rowan turned to Tommen. Decision, sire? Tommen straightened. Do it. His voice, though quiet, felt as though it rang in his chest like struck copper. Servants raced, quills scratched, ravens departed in frantic flaps. Within hours, invitations reached noble dormitories inside the city and camps beyond. Carts rolled from the river gate packed with Tyrell cheeses, arbor wines, gilt dishes. In the great hall, trestle tables rose, while chandeliers of cut crystal were lowered to polish every pendant prism. Banners of major houses draped pillars. Lion, rose, falcon, trout, sun spear, all interspersed with the seven-pointed star, so the sept could not claim exclusion. Evening waned to twilight, sky clearing as if gods paused to voyeur. Guests arrived in a trickle that soon became a tide. Golden company envoys in plumed caps, sisters of the most devout in linen habit, former squire of House Estremont wearing a stag brooch, Lord Edric Dane in black and gold. Musicians tuned harps. Stewards poured wine that dawn still remembered as grapes. Tommen greeted each group with smiles practiced in his earliest lessons, yet tempered now by somber stakes. He wore a doublet of deep cobalt sewn with silver thread that caught torchlight, circlet in place, sword at hip. Not a boy playing dress, but a youth claiming shape. Lady Olenna, throned beside the dais, surveyed with thin satisfaction. A garden of intrigue. She murmured, "May its fragrance stun the sparrow senseless." Rowan monitored doorways, folding new arrivals into seating schemes that paired Septon initiates with brash hedge knights, silent sisters with Bravosi silk merchants. He whispered motivations to pages. House Seri owes crown transport levies. Seat them near the portmaster. Place Lord Morel Bullock by the banker from Lies. They quarreled in council, time to mend. Political tinctures poured with precision. At the high table, Tommen raised goblet. Friends of faith and kingdom, I welcome you in peace. May the Seven's light and the crown's shelter intertwine this night, forging unity against discord. He gestured. Servers began. Platters emerged. Honey-glazed duck, drizzled leeks in almond milk, ocean eels stuffed with crab, wheels of aged Planky Town cheese, trenchers piled with spiced chickpeas. The hall hummed as guests indulged and conversed. Septus debated theologics with Myrish weavers about the stranger's symbolism in Eastern iconography. Bronn of the Blackwater, appearing self-invited yet tolerated, taught a excitable novice how to dice for copper. Everywhere, laughter spliced suspicion. Wine filled cracks where tension might have seeped. Tommen circulated, escorted by Balin and a Tyrell sworn sword. He paused at clusters to listen, to ask after families, to compliment plain cloaks as eagerly as embroidered. He discovered something surprising. When stripped of titles and tyrannies, people wanted mostly the same: safety, hearth, purpose. He carried those revelations like rare coins back to his seat. Near midnight, Rowan announced a tourney of courtesy to be held on the morrow. A melee limited to blunted tourney swords, open only to youths under 3 and 10 Namandays, sons of both noble and common lineages. The crowd murmured approval. The idea, conceived by Lady Olenna, aimed to enthrall citizen spectators and tether their loyalty to spectacle rather than sermons. During dessert, a trifling of persimmon custard and sugared pine nuts, Tommen excused himself quietly. Balin shadowed as he slipped through side passage to the tower chamber where Cersei waited. She wore a plain gray gown, golden hair cropped but combed to shine. She stared out narrow window slits, moonlight painting her cheekbones. "Your feast reaches even these stones," she said without turning. "Music drifts like perfume." Tommen closed the door. "Tonight you depart." She turned now, eyes narrowing. "Depart. Pilgrimage," he explained quickly. "To Duskendale. Lady Olenna's scheme. You'll ride before dawn." Cersei's jaw clenched. "And leave you here, alone among vipers." "Not alone. Rowan, Balin, Lady Olenna, and the 7. some would insist. He attempted a smile. She gripped his forearms. Tommen, they will twist your feast into revel of decadence. The sparrow will claim you drown piety in arbor gold. Let him, Tommen said. He preaches against shadows of sins, but hunger for flame betrays his own darkness. I will show the realm an alternative, unity without terror. If that fails, at least you'll be safe beyond his reach. Nender. Cersei searched his face. You have grown. Her voice trembled. Pride or dread? He could not discern. Take care you do not grow brittle. Balon knocked. 2 Tyrell guards waited in corridor, cloaks plain brown dye. Cersei accepted a travel cloak of undyed wool. Before pulling its hood, she brushed fingers over Tommen's cheek. Remember who you are. She whispered, and remember who I was. Then she followed the guards. Steps soft but resolute. Tommen watched her retreat until shadows swallowed her. When he returned to the feast, he found the hall louder but looser, as though tension had uncoiled into bruised camaraderie. He resumed his place. Toasts soared. Minstrels launched a ballad, lauding both star and crown in alternating verses. Only near cockcrow did the last guest depart, weaving under lanterns. Rowan tallied names of those too flushed to remember promises issued over spiced wine. Olenna supervised cleanup, ensuring even crumbs of arbor loaf found hungry mouths in the kitchen yard. Tommen retired to his chambers, exhaustion weighting every limb. Yet once in bed he lay staring at the canopy, replaying faces. The bright-eyed squire of House Penrose praising the Seven's mercy. The Lycian banker admiring Dornish embroidery. The silent sister who pressed a coin with 7 holes into his palm in blessing. He drifted into sleep, thinking that perhaps webs of power could be rewoven with threads of simple fellowship. He dreamed of wildfire pots arranged like candles around the throne, green flames licking upward while the high sparrow chanted, voice melding with bells. He saw himself stand, raise a goblet, and pour wine onto the flames, which hissed and sizzled, then paled to harmless steam. In dream logic, steam rose and condensed into raindrops that fell upon upturned faces of the city, washing fear away. But when Tommen tried to step down from the dais, feet rooted, iron blades fused to souls, the throne's swords groaned through him. He woke gasping. Dawn bleed pink at the windows. Servants hurried. The youth melee demanded early preparation. The tourney field lay east of the Dragon Gate, chosen to coax commoners from Sept Plaza.I. Rowan's edict proclaimed free bread and stewed lentils for all spectators, courtesy of the crown and reach. Blacksmiths throughout the city earned coin fashioning dulled practice swords through the night. Tommen breakfasted on porridge sweetened with figs, while Balon reported that Cersei's escort had passed the river gate before moonset without interference. A weight eased off the king's chest, though another seemed to replace it, as if her absence carved a hollow only wariness could fill. He donned plain leather jerkin, cloak of modest cloth of felt, and rode with minimal guard to the tourney field. Pavilions sprouted like bright mushrooms, each flying its youth's sigil. Crowds swelled swiftly, faces eager for diversion from famine talk and fanatical sermons. Bakers distributed crusty loaves. Cauldrons bubbled. Minstrels played jaunty airs. Against this festival air, harriers positioned along perimeters appeared almost out of place, grim reminders of a different order. Lady Olenna joined Tommen in a private box, built atop hastily erected timber. She scanned the masses. Music, bread, sport. Better sermon than any hooded crow's croak. The melee commenced, pairs of youths clashing in friendly combat. Clattering shields. Laughter as often as yelps. Bets flew. Tommen found himself cheering for a farm boy of House Wendwater retainer, who wielded his blunted blade like a fisher's gaff, outmaneuvering a puffing scion of House Sunglass. The farm boy bowed shyly when, victorious, Tommen applauded. That image, a king praising a low-born youth, passed through the throng like charged air. But near midday, tremors rippled from the city proper. bells tolling not the standard 7, but an urgent, chaotic peal. Tommen stiffened. Rowan materialized at the box stair. "Your Grace." Riots in Cobbler's Square. The faith calls sinners to repentance, accuse feast-goers of debauchery. Lady Olenna's mouth pinched. The sparrow turns bread to ashes before it digests. Tommen rose. "We must quell violence. If we flee to the keep, we abandon these people." Rowan hesitated. "Your safety. My safety lies with theirs." Tommen descended. Balin barked orders. A dozen Kingsguard recruits, white cloaks newly woven to replace fallen brothers, formed ring around the king. He strode into the crowd, voices parting. Some citizens shouted warnings, "Back to the Red Keep." But others reached to touch his sleeve, pleading for protection. Tommen halted atop a wagon bed. Balin boosted him so he could be seen. "Good folk of King's Landing," he proclaimed, throat raw. "The 7 judge hearts, not rumors. Last night we shared table to honor them, and each other. Hold that memory. Do not answer calls to tear neighbor from neighbor." "Da!" A stone sailed, clanged off the wagon's side. Tommen flinched but pressed on. "Return to your homes. Tomorrow, the Crone's Day of Remembrance, I will open granaries for those in need. Justice walks with mercy." Another stone arced but missed. A Harrier detachment marched into square, cudgels raised. Their captain ordered Tommen to stand aside in staccato bark. Rowan stepped between. "Lower your weapons, the king commands order." The captain sneered. "Order issues from the 7. He lifted his cudgel toward Tommen. Citizens gasped. Some surged forward protectively. In that fraught moment, one misstep would tip crowd into blood frenzy. Lady Olenna's earlier words rang in Tommen's mind. "Kings who thirst for war seldom sip victory." He did not thirst, but war's taste reached his tongue. He projected calm. "Captain, the warrior teaches courage tempered by honor. Strike me and you strike the realm's covenant. Lay down arms, share bread with these men and women, and prove the 7's grace." For heartbeat after heartbeat, rain cloud stillness roared. Then, an elderly woman near front pressed half a loaf into the Harrier captain's free hand. Awkward, he stared at crust, then at the king. Something in Tommen's steady gaze unsettled, whichever rage churned beneath the helm. He lowered the cudgel. By ones and twos, his squad followed suit. The square exhaled. Tension seeped into cobblestones like morning dew. Tommen nodded, climbed down, and began directing stewards to open grain sacks from a nearby storehouse. The riot deflated into queue lines, curses into muttered apologies. Rowan breathed, wiping sweat. "You gamble bigger chips each hour, Your Grace." Tommen managed a thin smile. "I've none left to save, may as well wager all." The afternoon waned into amber haze. News spread rapidly. The king himself quelled violence with words, not blades. Meanwhile, reports filtered that Cersei's caravan had reached Rosby. Safe for now. Lady Olenna issued riders to Highgarden's vanguard, counseling restraint yet readiness. At sunset, Tommen convened council. Beside Rowan and Olenna sat Edric Dane representing the Northmarch lords. Sir Kevin returned from visiting city garrisons, and Lord Harry Swift, who managed coin. Their debate ran long. How to stock winter stores, whether to tax guilds, how to shield ordinary septons from retaliation. They argued, negotiated, scribbled figures. Near midnight, a raven hammered the window. Balin admitted the bird. A scroll hung from its leg bearing Jaime Lannister's seal. The golden lion over crimson. Rowan cracked wax, read swiftly, and passed to Tommen. Jaime reported gathering several hundred free riders and Lannister loyalists near Casterly Rock. He offered his sword to shield his Sun King, though he could not cross Riverlands unopposed without risking Tully revenge. Still, a lion stirred. Tommen's chest tightened. Relief and trepidation. "I shall invite Uncle Jaime to King's Landing," he decided. "The Sparrow will think twice before challenging a knight famed across realms." Rowan frowned. His presence complicates alliances. The Tyrells and Dornish mistrust him. "Let them," Olenna said. "Complication means options. Better a crowded table than empty bowl." Then, 3 nights passed. Each dawn brought new sparrow edicts accusing feast participants of gluttony. Each dusk brought Tommen's decrees of charity, sanction, compromise. The city balanced, precarious, on twin beams of sermon and relief. Yet beneath surface cracks widened. Merchants found tithes demanded at septi doors. Smithies complained Harrier requisitions drained iron stocks. Rumors whispered of wildfire caches missing from royal vaults. Pyromancers denied involvement. The Guild of Alchemists sealed halls. Tommen sent Balin to audit, but red tape tangled. On the 4th morning, a cloaked figure appeared at the city gate, bearing Duskendale's seal. Guards led him direct to Rowan, a courier with Queen Mother's hand-signed letter. Rowan broke it under candle glow, eyes darting. "Sire," he breathed, "Duskendale is besieged. A breakaway host of faithful encircled the sept. They demand surrender of Cersei and those who shield her. Lord Hollard requests immediate aid." The chamber fell silent but for hearth crackle. Tommen stood, cloak brushing rushes. "Then we ride," he said. Rowan's eyes widened. "Into open battle. Into protection of my blood," Tommen returned, voice iron. "And to show the realm that the crown does not abandon vows." Lady Olenna struck her cane. "If you ride with an army. Mine stands ready." "Too slow," Rowan countered. "Duskendale may fall within a day." Balin offered. "A swift strike. 50 knights by river road. Could break siege long enough for reinforcements." Tommen nodded. "Select the fastest steeds. At dawn, we depart." Preparations unfurled like battle standards. Stable grooms readied destriers. Blacksmiths hammered horseshoes. Pages oiled chainmail. Tommen donned brigandine gifted by his grandfather, scaled with bright forged links light enough for a youth yet strong. Over it he wore cloak of navy, clasped by a lion-shaped brooch. Balin insisted upon helmed visor, though Tommen detested enclosure. Lady Olenna watched from rampart as the column assembled. 50 horse, 20 crossbowmen, wagons bearing medical supplies. A maester. She pressed a small pouch into Tommen's palm. "Sweet slip powder, should fear keep you awake. Use sparingly." She patted his cheek, eyes fierce and soft together. "Return crowned or not at all. Half a king helps no one." Rowan accompanied on horseback, despite protestations of gout. Kevin remained to govern city. They rode at first light. The Roserad lay slick, but unflooded. Mist clung to hedgerows, dew-jeweled spiderwebs strung between thistles. Farmers paused from chores to watch silent column pass. Some crossing themselves in sign of the star, others saluting. The sparrow's sermons had called Cersei Jezebel reborn. Yet many small folk remembered her almsgiving during war famine, and pitied a queen threatened by fire. By midday they reached the forks of the Manderley and woods turned thicker. Scouts reported faith stragglers establishing pickets along trails. Rowan advised a flank through marsh to avoid detection. Progress slowed. Reeds sucked hooves. Frogs croaked like drums. At duskglow, the towers of Duskendale's new crones, sept, rose above cresting poplars. Silhouette against blood-striped sky. Smoke curled from chimney vents, kitchen fires, or signal pyres. Tommen ordered halt within coppice. Balin, Rowan, and the commander of knights, Sir Lambert Crabbe, unfolded parchment sketches of town walls. Sir Lambert pointed to East Breach, where Hollard retainers might open Sally Gate. Plan. Knights dash across open field, strike Faith encampment from rear, draw them into melee while crossbowmen atop sept battlements rain bolts. Risk high. If harriers hold hostages, they might burn sept. Tommen listened, then spoke. Ride under banner of the Seven alongside Lion and Rose. Harriers may hesitate to cut down own symbol. Noel. Rowan tilted head. Bold. Could confuse friend and foe alike. All the better, Tommen said. Confusion breeds pause. Pause grants mercy. Night unfurled black and moonless. They advanced, torches hooded. Near edge of ridge they saw siege camp. Perhaps 300 sparrows bristling with pikes, fires glowing dull. Chants drifted, equal parts prayer and taunt. Within walls shadow flickered lantern glyph of Crone's lantern. Balin signaled. A shuttered lantern answered. The sally gate creaked. Sir Lambert spurred. Knights thundered down slope. Tommen rode center, heart thudding. Cloak snapped. Hooves struck earth heavy as drums. Rowan's banner unfurled. A 7-pointed star stitched beside golden lion and Tyrell rose. Moonlight caught cloth. In gloom, it glowed eerie white. Harriers shouted, scrambled. Some formed shield wall, others knocked bows. But they hesitated, eyeing star upon royal charge. That heartbeat of uncertainty allowed knights to crash. Steel met wood, pike splintered. Tommen felt shock of impact, jolt up arms, as he drove blade broadside into shield rim. Balin's warcry split air. Rowan hewed downward, gout be damned. From Sally Gate, hollered men surged, shouting, "For the king!" Crossbow strings twanged from sept roof. Faith ranks faltered. Some tried to set torches to siege ladders, but rain earlier had dampened pitch. Within minutes camp wavered like field of wheat before scythe. Yet at rear of melee, a cluster of harriers dragged a bound figure, Cersei, toward a cart stacked with barrels. Green liquid oozed from slats. Wildfire. Tommen's blood froze. One spark could immolate queen and sept alike. He kicked heels, driving steed. Balin followed. They swept around fray, intercepted group. A pious zealot raised torch, eyes wide, screaming verse of the Father's judgment. Tommen spurred straight, knocking man sprawling. Torch flew, landing in damp muck. Another zealot thrust spear. Balin parried, riposted, laid him low. Tommen dismounted. Slashed bindings with dagger. Cersei stumbled, but he caught elbow. "Mother, come!" Wildfire sloshed. A harrier flung flint to ignite. Rowan, charging up, hurled shield, striking man mid-spark. Rowan's horse reared, hoof crushed the spark. More sparrows converged, but hollered defenders formed crescent shield, driving them back. Knights set barrels aflame, not with wildfire but torch to wooden hoops. So contents boiled and vented harmless steam. One by one they toppled barrels into ditch, earth smothering. Cersei, breath ragged, clung to Tommen's arm. "You came," she whispered. "Always," he answered. "Ride. We must leave before they regroup." Rowan whistled retreat. Banner bearers wheeled. Knights herded queen toward town gate. Faith survivors, leaderless, fell back to tree line, some dropping weapons. None pursued beyond capacity of zeal to outpace fear. Inside Duskendale walls, townsfolk thronged, cheering Tonsti. Cersei hugged her son before watchers. Tommen removed helm. Sweat-soaked curls plastered. He raised sword hilt to sky. A roaring response echoed down alleys. That night, within the Crone's sept, they supped on broth thick with barley while maesters tended wounds. Rowan's arm bled from arrow graze. Balin's cheek bore slash. Tommen moved among injured, praising courage, sharing water. He felt exhaustion drag limbs, yet mind hummed. They had won a battle, not war. Yet for the first time since sparrows marched, he tasted victory iron mixed with hope. Cersei sat upon bedding near altar, eyes fixed on flickering votive lights. Tommen approached. She spoke first. "Wildfire, they would have burned us both to sanctify claim." "Not while I breathe," he said. She took his hand. "Hear me. You cannot share rule with men who sanctify fire. Fire obeys none." "I know," Tommen whispered. He stepped outside sept into courtyard quiet beneath stars. Rowan joined, bandaged. "The sparrow will brand you oathbreaker for this raid." Tommen gazed skyward. "He brands any who oppose. Let him." He turned to Rowan. "Send ravens, tonight. Proclaim that the faith laid siege to pilgrims at Duskendale, and sought to light wildfire upon innocents. Let every maester and minstrel sing it." "Men themselves." Rowan's lips curved grimly. Truth spiced with spectacle. "They may swallow." "Enough must," Tommen said, voice steady. "Because come next moon, We march back to King's Landing, an army at our heel and righteousness at our fore. And if the faith bars gates, we will open them, not with fire, but with conviction heavier than steel." Rowan bowed. "As you will, your grace." Under constellations older than thrones and septs alike, Tommen felt an echo of the dream where wine quenched flame. The path ahead wove through ash and blood. But tonight, the flame had faltered, not him. He closed eyes, breathed petrichor and distant sea, and for a heartbeat let himself simply be a boy, a king, a lion's cub learning to roar beneath the silent judgment of stars. Canny. Gray dawn seeped into the eastern sky like ink in water, cold and slow, as the column of riders departed Duskendale's stout walls to the muted cheers of townsfolk leaning from ramparts. Tommen rode at its heart, flanked by Sir Balin and Sir Lambert. Cersei tucked into the protected pocket just behind. The air still smelled of damp earth and charred oak where faith tents had burned in the night's skirmish. Yet a tenuous calm clung to fields stripped of sparrow banners. The Queen Mother's hood hung low, disguising the deeper tremble of fatigue in her shoulders. She had slept scarcely an hour, but the steel shining beneath her weary gaze warned any who looked too long that lions did not bow to cages, however pious their bars. Rowan led the vanguard, already scribbling strategy in his mind for every crossroad they would encounter. Speed mattered now. The Sparrow's outriders surely galloped for King's Landing with tales of royal treachery and star-clad martyrs. If Tommen could pass through the city gates ahead of that tide of rumor, he might set the day's narrative before sermons twisted it into fire and brimstone. He carried with him sealed letters signed by Lord Hollard and 6 borough elders, attesting that the faith had laid siege to pilgrims and attempted wildfire immolation. Confessions from 3 captured zealots rode in a strongbox under Balin's eye. Yet words on parchment rarely burned as bright as dogma shouted from pulpit. Rain threatened but held back. Clouds banked like slate slabs across a wan sky. They rode at a pace just shy of reckless, hooves muffled by weeks of mud. Twice, scouts reported clusters of Sparrow sympathizers blocking hamlet roads with overturned carts and boiled leather shields. Rowan circumvented each without clash, sending Hollard outriders to promise grain in exchange for clear passage later. Cersei watched these negotiations with tight lips, whispering to Tommen that mercy was a blade that dulled quicker than it cut. Tommen listened, but did not slow his resolve. Fear, he knew, was the Sparrow's whetstone, and he would not grind against it. Midday found the column crossing the rolling wheat country south of Sow's Horn. Fields as yet untouched by reapers, because the harvest had been delayed by summer storms. Here, they overtook Lady Olenna's forward scouts. 24 Tyrell outriders in green surcoats, bearing news that the Reach host had encamped 3 leagues outside King's Landing, its banners bristling like a hedge grown overnight. Soldiers drilled in view of city walls, but took no hostile action, waiting on Rowan's word. Tommen felt the weight of that dormant army pressing at his back like a second, invisible shield. He wondered if the small folk inside the capital saw hope in the roses, or only another scented blade poised to fall. They halted briefly at a brook to water the horses. Cersei knelt to cup cold water to her lips, then splashed it across her cropped hair. She rose, droplets jeweled on lashes, and regarded her son with an odd, searching smile. "You rode into fire for me." She said, her voice worn but steady. "I rode for justice," Tommen answered. The warmth touched his cheeks. "For family, then." "Justice is a banner that flaps whichever way the wind of victory blows," she murmured. "But blood stays whether the wind howls or quiets. Remember that when courtiers call your mercy weakness." He did not reply. Words felt brittle next to the truth reflected in her gold-flecked eyes. That mercy and weakness sometimes shared the same face until battle tested which survived. The sun sagged toward afternoon when the red keep's distant towers appeared beyond folds of low hills, their reddish stone catching bleak light. Thin spirals of smoke climbed from several points within the city, none large enough to mark great fires, but too many to promise peace. Closer still, bells tolled. Uneven, frantic. Tommen urged his gelding forward, Rowan's banner streaming in answer. At the Lion Gate, Gold cloaks stood in uneasy formation, cheeks hollow where they had fasted alongside sparrows to prove piety. The gate captain, a gaunt veteran named Sir Harik, stepped forth. He bowed stiffly, but placed a gloved hand upon the hilt of his sword as his gaze landed on Cersei. "By order of His High Holiness, the Queen Mother is to be remanded until inquest," he announced, voice quavering between fear of crown and dread of sept. "The king may proceed, but imperial matters require." Rowan spurred forward before Tommen could speak. "Sir Harik, open these gates, or be replaced by one who will. The Queen travels under sanctuary charter endorsed by the seal of Duskendale and the king's signet." He flashed the vellum scroll. "Defy this, and you defy the realm's lawful writ." Harriers watched from behind barricades erected along the adjoining street. Cudgels rested across shoulders, star symbols freshly painted white as if to dazzle doubt. But they did not yet move. Sir Harik hesitated, eyes darting to Tommen, to the approaching dust plume of Tyrell outriders, to the small folk gathering in side streets drawn by rumor of returning royalty. Tommen nudged his horse closer. "Captain, the city stands on edge. Let us bring calm, not steel. Open, and any grievances may be heard before council, where they belong." The simplicity of the appeal, wrapped in the boy's earnest tone, broke the stalemate. Sir Harik signaled, gears groaned, and the lion gate yawned. The column entered, hooves ringing on cobblestone. Some small folk cheered, others crossed themselves. The harriers melted down side alleys, perhaps to report, or to brood. They rode through littered thoroughfares smelling of last night's ash and brine. Banners of seven-pointed stars had multiplied, draped over shop fronts, chalked on shuttered doors. Tommen sensed eyes watching from windows cracked open the width of suspicion. At the great sept, a gathering surged in fervent chant, voices raised in hymns that sounded less worship than warning. The king did not slow. Arriving at Maegor's Holdfast, they found the outer yard braced. Lady Olenna on a carved chair of black oak, Tyrell knights arrayed in a half-moon, gold roses gleaming on polished helms. Opposite them loitered a squad of faith militant led by the same brother Oswick, who had delivered messages before. His shaved scalp glistened in pale light as he regarded the newcomers through narrowed lids. "I greet the king's safe return," he intoned. "But word flies that blood was spilled at Duskendale, and that holy servants met wrongful deaths while attempting lawful arrest." Rowan dismounted. "Word often flutters faster than fact. Witness oaths and testimony of Lord Hollard say otherwise. But that discussion belongs in council, not courtyard." Oswick's gaze flicked to Cersei. "The Queen Mother's presence violates the High Septon's recall. She must be surrendered for purification." Lady Olenna rose, cane tapping stone like a miniature war drum. "Brother, you mistake courtesy for capitulation. The Queen stands at her son's side, and you stand inside his walls at his pleasure. Rattle chains elsewhere, or leave in peace." Knights lifted shields, steel rasped. Tension squeezed the air until it hummed. Tommen raised a glove. "Brother Oswick, we will convene at noon in the throne room. The faith, the Tyrells, my council, all parties. Until then, any demand is premature." His voice, though not loud, cut through the courtyard. "Go, inform His Holiness." Oswick studied the boy as though seeing him for the first time. He inclined his head, the gesture short of deference but lacking defiance. "Ace, the king commands," he said, and withdrew with his men. Only when their footsteps faded did Tommen exhale. Balin laid a reassuring hand on the king's stirrup. "One knot untied, many remain." He spent the next hour in swift conference with Rowan, Olenna, Sir Kevin, and Pycelle, whose stooped frame seemed to have aged an entire reign in 5 days. They met in the solar, overlooking the inner ward, where tapestries that once depicted dragons breathing fire had been replaced by neutral pastoral scenes, to offend neither Faith nor Tyrell. Here Tommen relayed details of Duskendale. There, Rowan produced the confessions of the 3 zealot prisoners. Pycelle stamped each with the Grand Maester's seal. Sir Kevin advocated firm action. Immediate arrest of the Sparrow, under authority of treason. Olenna argued for the longer game. Use confession scrolls to erode public trust. Let the Sparrow lose moral ground before moving steel. Rowan hedged between, noting that the wildfire attempt gave grounds for immediate condemnation under alchemist charters. Tommen listened, weighing, measuring. Noon approached. The Iron Throne chamber filled like a storm basin. Lords of middling houses crowded lower tiers. Ambassadors from Mar and Pentos huddled near pillars, and a press of small folk admitted by royal proclamation clustered behind a rope line, eager to witness justice or chaos. Harriers ringed the central aisle, cudgels grounded. Opposite them stood Tyrell men-at-arms with rose-engraved poleaxes. Between those lines ran a corridor of tension leading straight to the throne, where Tommen now sat, feet barely brushing the edge of the first melted blade. Cersei occupied a chair on his left, her presence daring anyone to scoff at the sanctuary claim. Rowan, Balin, and Kevin stood to the right, while Pycelle perched on a lower step, like an anxious owl. The High Septon entered in plain linen, eyes heavy with sleepless nights. Murmurs rippled as he took a position between the 7 crystal candlesticks. Behind him, Brother Oswick carried a book bound in weathered calfskin. The Testimonium, sacred codex of martyr accounts. The Sparrow's stare passed over the assembly before resting on Tommen with studied gentleness. "Your Grace returns in triumph, if rumors ring true," he began, voice carrying to every corner. Yet triumph rings hollow if steeped in sacrilege. Faithful brothers report barrels of wildfire ignited by royal knights, scorching proof of the mother's mercy withheld. Rowan stepped forward, holding vellum. These scrolls contain sworn deposition by Lord Hollard that the faith militant transported those barrels for execution of captives. Maester Panter at Duskendale verifies the seals. The Queen's knights extinguished, not ignited, wildfire, preventing massacre. The High Septon lifted a trembling hand. Even if wildfire were ill-used, does that absolve bloodshed? Warriors of the 7 fell beneath lion blades. After besieging pilgrims, Cersei interjected sharply, voice slicing through murmurs. "Have you read the Crone's book, High Holiness? She admonishes those who raise weapon against wayfarers seeking refuge." A collective intake of breath hissed across the hall. No queen, not even Margaery in her prime, had spoken so boldly since the faith rearmed. The Sparrow's beard twitched, yet he forced a serene smile. "Queen Mother, grief may cloud memory. We sought only to escort you back to the light. Dain. And if flames burned away sin, so much the better." She shot back. Tommen tapped the armrest, signaling calm. "Holiness, the realm reels. One more drop of wildfire may drown thousands. I propose a council of inquiry, equal numbers faith and crown, chaired by the Grand Maester, to examine all charges and accounts. No arrests, no arms, until verdict." Oswick whispered in the Sparrow's ear. The elder nodded slowly. "If inquiry proceeds with true balance, I accept. Let us decide membership now." Then, negotiations unfolded like a tense chess match on the dais. The faith nominated Brother Oswick and Septa Isabel, renowned for ferocious asceticism. The crown selected Rowan and Lady Olenna, whose cane now seemed as much gavel as walking stick. A neutral voice was offered by Archmaester Beldekar of the Alchemists' Guild, whose knowledge of wildfire could illuminate truth or immolate lies. The Sparrow objected to Beldekar's rumored dealings with Lysine smugglers. Olenna countered that smugglers at least understood fire's cost. The crowd bristled with each parry. At last, composition settled. 3 from faith, 3 from crown, Maester Pycelle as chair. A compromise that satisfied no one yet prevented brawl. The Sparrow signaled acceptance with a bow to Tommen. "Let inquiry commence on the morrow at sunrise. Until verdict, the faith militant withdraws patrols to Sept precincts, save ceremonial watch." A murmur of surprise. Many had feared he would never loosen grip. "May the Seven's light guide," he finished, then turned and departed, train of followers fluttering like doves that carried knives. When the doors boomed shut, conversations broke out in a dozen languages. Tommen felt sweat cool under his collar. He had bought breathing space, but at the price of letting the faith inside the palace of procedure. He glanced at Rowan, who offered a subtle nod. Some room to maneuver at least. That afternoon, inquiry members retreated to a vaulted chamber in the Tower of the Hand. Neutral ground ringed by shelves of dusty ledgers, and overseen by portraits of former hands, whose eyes seemed to watch with jaded amusement. They set agendas. Eyewitness depositions, chain of custody logs for Wildfire, revelations from captured zealots. Oswick sought immediate dismissal of prisoner testimony, calling them apostates tempted by coin. Olenna quipped that coin purchased less loyalty than fear, and sparrows trafficked in fear as often as merchants in silver. Pycelle croaked at them to stay civil. Outside, city pulse shifted. With harriers temporarily confined, markets reopened, hawkers piping for trade. Yet paranoia did not fade, it merely crouched. Rumors that the king would ban the faith spread via fishwives and ferrymen. Others claimed the sparrow had already anointed an alternative heir hidden in the Vale. A rumor Rowan traced to mummers paid in star coins. No sooner did he counter than a fresh rumor declared Highgarden's army bore plague fleas. Words like Wildfire, once sparked, danced unpredictably. Through the suspense, the youth melee resumed. The final bouts from postponed day. Tommen attended, wearing a half-mail vest to soothe anxious guards. Children clashed with wooden swords, laughter bright in the gray of looming conflict. Among contestants, a slender Dornish girl, daughter of a minor spice trader, seized victory with a dexterous flick that disarmed a tall boy twice her size. The crowd roared delight. Tommen descended, presented her a silver brooch shaped like a cat instead of a lion, the first smithy trinket his own pocket gold had bought. When he clasped it to her cloak, cheers rose equal parts for champion and king. In that buoyant moment, harrier spies lurking at periphery took note. The boy wove webs not only with lords, but with hearts. Night wrapped the keep in a hush, broken only by distant hymnals from the sept, and by the chime of Rowan's pen. Scratching parchment. The hand compiled witness lists while Olenna napped upright, cane across lap like a sheathed dagger. In his own chamber, Tommen read the confession of Brother Maribald, one of the captured zealots, where the man admitted the Sparrow's inner council had stockpiled Wildfire beneath the Temple of Memory for the purging of heresy. Tommen's pulse quickened. Should such truth be proven, the faith would lose all legitimacy. Yet the confession lacked corroboration. Evidence remained hidden under stone floors, where royal eyes could not pierce. Balin entered quietly. "Your Grace," scouts returned. The Sparrow's men moved crates into the sept under cover of darkness. Too large for grain, too heavy for scrolls. He hesitated. "We suspect more Wildfire. Definitive proof would torpedo inquiry, perhaps combust entire city." Tommen's mind raced. Infiltration required stealth, not banners. He summoned Sir Lambert Crabb, master of the crossbowmen, and a wry-faced smuggler once pardoned by Robert Baratheon. Darren Longshore, now serving as under-harbor master. They outlined a plan. 2 nights hence, Darren would guide a small team through forgotten catacomb vents connecting Blackwater Rush to crypt caverns beneath the septi. They would verify presence of Wildfire kegs and, if possible, remove fuses to neutralize threat or, failing that, map storage for future seas. Rowan balked at risking the king's men on clandestine raid before inquiry ended. But Tommen countered that saving thousands outweighed protocol. Cersei urged swifter action. Ignite the Wildfire and blame the Sparrows. Tommen refused, though he glimpsed vindication flaring in her smile at his steadfastness. Strange approval from a woman who had once torched a tower to save her children. The second day of inquiry opened with deposition of the 3 zealot prisoners. Brother Oswick attempted to discredit them, citing incomplete penance after drunken brawls. Rowan produced tavern ledgers showing the men had sworn vows of sobriety years prior. Olenna then read aloud passages where the zealots described hearing the Sparrow proclaim, "If the lion boy will not bow, let green fire kneel him." The hall erupted. Pycelle called for decorum, beard trembling. Next came testimonies from 2 hollered archers, bruised but proud, describing the moment they saw sparrows tying the queen to barrels. Septa Isabel demanded proof beyond words. The archers produced a cloth scrap, stained with residue of wildfire. Glow faint in daylight, but unmistakable. Archmaester Beldekar confirmed substance when a drop hissed on water. Isabel sniffed that wildfire could come from hollered vaults as easily as faiths. The argument ended unresolved, yet the seed of doubt germinated in every listener. Meanwhile, Sir Kevin oversaw reinforcement of city watchposts. He quietly replaced captains whose zeal aligned too close to faith. In Flea Bottom, bread lines lengthened under crown relief wagons, where Tommen's sigil stamped each loaf. Children carried crusts home, singing a hastily composed tune about the cub king's courage. And the melody, simplistic though it was, traveled faster than sermons, lodging in ear and memory. By the third night, tension wound tight enough to thrash. The city's taverns buzzed with wagers. Would inquiry absolve the faith or unmask them? In shadowed corners, gamblers gave even odds on riots before week's end. At the Quill and Tankard near the distant university on the hill, ravens posted on blackboard tallied daily scuttlebutt, like market prices. Under that same dark moon, Darren Longshore guided his infiltration team. Sir Lambert, 2 agile crossbowmen, and a mute locksmith named Vecco, along a weed-choked culvert that stank of old fish and stranger refuse. They waded waist-deep through frigid water, torches hooded to slivers. Above, the sept's buttresses loomed. Vecco picked rusted iron grates older than any sparrow. They emerged into catacomb tunnels, where ancestors of high septs past lay sealed in faintly glowing crystal coffins. Echoes of dripping water mingled with muffled chant hymns far overhead. Lambert located locked iron doors at tunnel terminus, behind which emanated a faint sulfur tang. Vecco produced narrow picks, sweat beading on brow despite chill. The lock clicked open like a whispered betrayal. Inside lay rows of casks bound with iron straps, stenciled with the sigil of the Alchemists' Guild, a crowned skull. Straw packed between to prevent shifting. Using tallow sticks, the infiltrators marked counts. At least 200. Fuses, dipped in pitch, coiled atop lids. Above, a single stone vent shaft ran, presumably to the High Septon's private sanctum, for airflow or, more ominously, to channel ignition spark from safe distance. Lambert severed half the fuses with wet blades, coiling them into damp sacks. They dared not linger. Each heartbeat felt like hammer to volatile powder. Retreat was slower, burdened by sacks. As they slipped back into culvert, cathedral bells tolled midnight, then broke pattern into frantic peals. Someone had discovered intrusion elsewhere. Lambert shoved the sacks into Darren's arms. Run. They splashed along culvert, guards' shouts echoing overhead. Crossbow bolts hissed through great slits. One grazed Vecco's calf. The mute stumbled but pushed on. They burst from drainage mouth onto riverbank and vanished into midnight fog, while faith sentries raced the wrong direction, misled by Darren's earlier scattering of decoy footprints upriver. Rowan received the damp sacks before dawn, eyes widening at the coiled fuses. He summoned Tommen and Olenna. Sleeping now seemed a relic. They convened in a guardroom lit by one sputtering lantern, fumes of pitch mixing with the scent of strong tea. "This is the dagger," Rowan said, unrolling a severed fuse. "Without these, igniting wildfire at once is nigh impossible. They would need to refit each barrel anew." Tommen stared at the lengths of cord like snakes slain in nest. Relief warred with horror. "We hold the blade, yet they still grip hilt." "Better than their gripping both," Olenna said. "We expose them at inquiry." Rowan hesitated. "Confession alone may fail. Concrete evidence turns hearts. These fuses are proof." Olenna's eyebrow arched. "But bringing them into open risks, revealing infiltration, painting us aggressors." Pycelle, summoned belatedly, wheezed. "Evidence without provenance invites skepticism. Yet a witness can attest. Archmaester Beldekar could confirm cord origin, given his guild's sigil." Tommen considered. "Tomorrow we produce both." Beldakar's expertise and the fuses. Let the Sparrow refute his own guild's markings. They agreed. The fuses were sealed in an iron-capped chest under Balin's watch. Beldakar was roused from bed, given strong mulled wine, and sworn to secrecy until sunrise. Fourth day of inquiry dawned under slate skies. In the chamber, tension crackled like static. Oswick glowered. Septa Isabel prayed aloud, while Brother Malden, a younger zealot assigned as third faith delegate, paced behind them like caged hawk. Rowan commenced. We present physical evidence seized from beneath the sept of Baelor. Wildfire fuses bearing guild sigils. Balin-hauled chest, opened lid. Rows of dripping cords lay coiled like entrails. Crowd rustled, some stepping back as though flame might leap forth anyway. Archmaester Beldakar stepped to center. Spectacles perched on nose, and attested under oath that the cords were indeed alchemist make, designed for synchronized mass ignition. He produced ledger showing sale of 300 such cords to benefactor S. Sand. A pseudonym, but ledger notation matched faith treasury dates. The Sparrow retained composure with visible effort. Wildfire was confiscated from treasonous conspirators years past, Targaryen loyalists. The faith safeguards it until lawful disposal. Rowan riposted. Safeguards in catacomb beneath worship hall. Cords poised? Disposal shaped like massacre? Septa Isabel began to denounce crown perfidy, when Oswick suddenly slammed his palm onto the oak table. Enough. Even if wildfire storage broke law, the greater sin is theft of sacred property by infiltrators. They profaned tombs. Olenna leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Interesting hierarchy. Tombstones rank above peasants destined to burn. The debate spiraled, voices overlapping, until Pacel hammered a bronze bell. Silence teetered. Tommen, though not a formal member, rose from back row. Holiness, he said, addressing the Sparrow directly. The faith claims guardianship, yet guardians do not brandish torch above wheat stacks. I ask, no, I implore, you to relinquish wildfire to guild custody this very day. Let crown, guild, and faith together oversee its destruction at sea. Murmurs, surprise, curiosity. The Sparrow's eyes narrowed. And relinquish a relic of power to those who seek our ruin. Relics of power, Tommen answered, have a habit of ruining all. Every king since Aegon's first had reason to fear wildfire, not cherish it. I fear it too. Destroy it and prove the faith's path is mercy, not fire. The hall awaited reply with hearts thumping. For the first time, doubt flickered in the High Septon's gaze. A fleeting glint that said he recognized the trap. Refusal would paint him monster. Compliance would disarm him. He folded hands into sleeves, bowing his head as though consulting unseen voices. Finally, he lifted chin. The matter requires contemplation. Grant me a day. Time, Olenna muttered, for sparrows to refeather their gullibility. But Pacel, seizing momentum, declared session adjourned pending decision. Delegates filed out, rumors scattered like startled birds. Beyond the tower, street crowds debated outcome. Many interpreted Tommen's call to destroy wildfire as heroic. Some still dubbed it lion trickery. Yet the unstoppable chorus of the Cub King's courage song swelled. A baker whistled at kneading dough. Fishmongers sang while gutting cod. That night, Tommen convened select allies in the hidden rookery atop the Tower of the Hand, far above ears. Present: Rowan, Olenna, Sir Kevin, Balon, Beldakar, and unexpectedly, Margaery Tyrell, recently released to house arrest, but smuggled in among maids. She curtsied, eyes bright with cunning. Father allowed warriors to fight. She whispered to Tommen, Mother allowed thorns to scheme. Permit me words to sway hearts. She brandished a folded parchment penned in graceful hand. a proclamation of joint charity capitalizing on Wildfire Disposal Day, inviting small folk to a lantern-lighting ceremony for peace. Candles beat sermons, she said, when fear wearies ears. Let the city watch stars reflected in lantern glass, rather than imagine wildfire horrors. Rowan nodded. Public spectacle beyond the Sparrow script could tip tide. Olenna smirked. My granddaughter always knew theater. Tommen agreed. Tomorrow, after morning prayers, we announce disposal and lantern vigil. Every citizen receives a clay lamp with oil from royal stores. No. Expensive, Pycelle complained, then shrugged when no one cared. But disposal required access to Wildfire. If the Sparrow refused, plan faltered. Rowan argued they needed fallback. Seize Wildfire by force if inquiry collapsed. Beldekar revealed subterranean tunnels the alchemists once used during Mad King's reign. He could guide soldiers. Tommen authorized contingency but insisted first attempt via diplomacy. The Fifth Dawn arrived cloaked in swirling fog. Inquiry reconvened. The Sparrow arrived later than usual, flanked not by Oswick, but by a new entourage of silent septons. His face bore calm, carved from marble. Your Grace, he began. Prayer delivers clarity. The faith consents. The Wildfire shall be relinquished to guild custody for destruction within 7 days. Gasps, then applause from some lords. Tommen felt weight lift. He bowed. The crown thanks you. Together we turn from darkness. Margaery stepped forward from audience row, voice lifting. And to seal unity, the crown invites all to a vigil of lanterns tomorrow eve, honoring the light of the seven and goodwill of brothers and sisters across the realm. Even faith delegates could not object without seeming curmudgeon. The Sparrow offered a conservative nod. Light banishes shadow. Outside, proclamations spread. Potters rushed to fulfill orders. Oil merchants sang prayers for profit. Children chased one another waving imaginary lamps. The city, though tired, woke to possibility of celebration rather than trial. But beneath euphoria, Tommen's council prepared. If Sparrow's acceptance masked scheme, they would not be caught unready. Balon doubled night watch. Kevin drilled gold cloaks at moonrise. Rowan posted scouts at every sewer grate leading to sept vaults. As sun set, Tommen stood atop rampart with Cersei, watching crimson horizon bleed. She clasped his hand. Today you won a battle with words. Beware the silence that follows. A cornered zealot bites without warning. He squeezed her fingers. Then we must approach the corner carefully. Below, horse carts rattled, carrying wildfire casks under guild sigil, and soldier escort toward dock warehouses for temporary storage before sea voyage. Beldekar supervised, record keeper Quill twitching each time a barrel rolled aboard. Sparrows did not intervene. They merely watched, their faces mask still, yet eyes fevered. Night deepened. Fog gave way to sharp stars. In the Red Keep, Tommen finally allowed himself to doze in the window alcove, overlooking the courtyard where lantern cranes were erected. He dreamed of glowing lamps rising like fireflies, lifting worries skyward. Yet at dream's edge, he saw one lantern burst into green flame, then another, until a constellation of wildfire lit the sky with murderous beauty. He woke with heart hammering. Outside, bells tolled half-night. Balon burst into chamber. Wildfire wagons attacked at River Gate. Explosion threw flames across wharf. Tommen leaped up, throwing cloak over night shift. In corridor, smoke wafted faint but acrid. He raced downstairs to outer ward. From parapet he saw lurid green light licking sky beyond northeastern wall, painting clouds unholy emerald. Screams carried over wind. Rowan arrived panting. 2 barrels detonated. Someone struck flint as convoy approached ships. The rest of casks remained secured in warehouse, but dock district burns. His eyes shone with reflection of hellfire. Tommen clenched fists. Casualties? Scores. Hard to count. Fire spreads. Deploy bucket lines. Open river pumps. Send Rose Riders with sand casks. Orders flew. Gongs sounded. Lines of prisoners were formed to haul water in chain. Maesters prepared salves. As Tommen supervised, he noticed shape moving through crowd. Brother Oswick, cloak singed, blood on cheek, claiming he tried to stop arsonists who cried, "Lannister tyranny" before igniting barrels. Whether lie or truth, panic clung to his words like soot. Dawn found smoldering black skeletons where warehouses once stood. But miracle or design, main stock of barrels inside stone building remained intact. Flames somehow failed to breach thick walls. Darren Longshore had earlier reinforced them with quicklime plaster that hardened fire-resistant. Rowan's contingency saved the city from catastrophe of greater scale than Blackwater Bay. Still, 3 streets lay blackened, 30 bodies counted, among them children sleeping in riverfront lofts. The Sparrow appeared near noon amid ash fog, robes immaculate as if woven from denial. He expressed sorrow, tragedy of cowardly zeal, and pledged sparrows to help rebuild. Tommen publicly thanked him, privately sensing puppet strings. Inquiry resumed that afternoon, but semblance of cooperation had burned with the docks. Faith delegates accused alchemists of poor storage. Beldekar countered sabotage. Rowan demanded those responsible be surrendered. The Sparrow demurred, calling for reflection. Tension snapped. Pycelle adjourned indefinitely. Back in council chamber, Rowan closed doors. "We stand at brink. Faith will not relent now that blood renews fervor." Kevin slammed fist. "Then strike before they prepare second blaze." Cersei's eyes glinted. "They play with fire. Let them choke on smoke." Olenna gazed into distance, thoughtful. "Another path remains. Sever their purse. Faith thrives on donations. My bankers in Old Town can freeze accounts, intercept tithes bound for King's Landing. Then shall." Rowan nodded slowly. "Cut coin, starve serpent." "Do it," Tommen said. "But prepare for serpent strike before hunger slows it." The Lantern Vigil would proceed despite tragedy. Canceling would concede street narrative to Sparrow. Yet Tommen doubled guard and moved the site from docks to expansive square outside Dragon Gate, far from Sept and away from wildfire stores. Invitations spread anew, promising prayer-led candlelight, communal singing, free soup cauldrons. Evening arrived crisp, wind carrying fresh-cut pine aroma from Tyrell charcoal braziers lining the square. Thousands gathered, holding clay lamps whose wicks glowed amber. Tommen stood on a dais, a single lamp in hand. He spoke simple words. Mourning the dead, honoring those who fought flames, pledging unity. His voice faltered once when naming victims under 10 years of age, but recovered to vow no more children would die for pride or dogma. A hush followed, deeper than any sermon's hush. Then, at Queen Margaery's cue, drums beat soft triplets, and on that signal every lamp lifted. A sea of light rose, flickering against dark ramparts. The Tyrell singers began Hymn of the Mother's Mercy, intertwined with Riverland's lullaby. 2 melodies twining into one. Tears shone on cheeks of bakers, blacksmiths, iron bank clerks, even scar-faced mercenaries. Up on Sept walls, sparrows watched uncertain, some holding dark lamps unlit. Tommen scanned faces. Hope, grief, suspicion, awe. Every color of a realm's soul. He realized zealous fire might scorch, but hearts still longed for gentler flame. Sudden crack ripped air. A crossbow bolt clanged against steel of Balin's raised shield, deflected inches from Tommen's chest. Chaos erupted. Lamps bobbed, some smashed oil spilling. Guards fanned, seeking shooter. From rooftop south of square, cloaked figure leapt, scrambling across tiles. Arrows flew, figure ducked. Vanished behind chimney. Balin hustled Tommen behind shield wall. Yet the king refused retreat. He raised lamp high again, voice ringing across frantic square. "Hold steady. Do not drop your lights." Remarkably, crowd stilled. Lamps steadied. Music resumed. Shaky but courageous. Moments later, gold cloaks hauled a bleeding man forward, arrow through calf. Assassin toppled during escape. Under torchlight, his cloak revealed faint star stitched in thread. A hush coiled around scene. Rowan ordered him delivered to inner dungeon. Cersei muttered that shadows listened. Lantern vigil continued, fragile yet unbroken. When final hymn ended, Tommen extinguished his lamp and spoke one last promise. The realm would outshine any torch raised against it. Applause rolled like distant thunder. Back in keep, interrogation unfolded. The captured assassin, under Maester's poppy and iron, confessed faith hierarchy ordered him to kill the false king and ignite lantern oil to blame alchemists. He named brother Oswick as liaison. Rowan exhaled a curse. Kevin demanded immediate warrants. Tommen nodded, though dread pooled in gut. Public arrest of senior faith figure would shred truce. Yet sparrows forced the hand. Before warrants penned, Oswick was found dead in his cell at Sept compound. Throat slit, note pinned. The stranger takes traitors. The sparrow disavowed knowledge, claiming Oswick succumbed to guilt. Few believe. With faith chain fracturing, moderate septons petitioned Crown for mediation. Tommen seized opportunity. He proposed a conclave of 7, one from each region, to draft everlasting accord between throne and faith, restricting arms, limiting tides, ensuring education for poor. The Reach and Riverlands rallied. Dorne expressed interest. The Vale wavered. The North silent, nursing its own wounds. The faith balked, but cracks widening. Rowan worked night and day drafting charter language. Olenna wrote letters dripping honey and steel. Kevin negotiated with merchant guilds to finance schooling in exchange for tax relief. Slowly, pillars rose under the edifice of compromise. Yet within the sept, the sparrow bristled. Isolated yet convinced martyrdom awaited. Wildfire stores diminished but not vanished. Enough remained to cleanse a city. He insisted to inner circle. Septa Isabel begged caution. Younger brother Malden muttered of visions saw and dream. Green angels devouring red keep. Fanatic seeds germinated. The culmination approached. Tommen set a final date for conclave at full moon, 12 nights hence, inviting the sparrow as honored voice. He sent royal guarantee of safety, yet stationed Tyrell and Gold Cloak cohorts around Sept district, under guise of protecting pilgrims. Scouts reported faith, forging spiked maces behind shuttered cloisters. Tension strummed. 3 nights before conclave, Cersei came to Tommen's solar at midnight. Moonlight silvered her hair's ragged ends. Softer now but stubbornly bright. You walk into Lion's Den willingly, she said, sitting opposite. The sparrow will never yield. Better to end him and be done. I end him, Tommen answered, and he becomes martyr. End the cause, not the man. Show the realm his fire burns nothing but ash. She studied him. Your father, Robert, won throne with hammer, not lamp, and lost peace with it, Tommen murmured. Silence stretched, then she smiled. A sorrowful, proud curve. You are not child I birthed. You are something else, shaped by storms I never foresaw. She reached, squeezed his hand once, let go. If you fall, realm will burn no matter your lamp's glow. But if you stand, perhaps the lion learns to roar without blood. And so, he watched her leave, heart thudding like drum of distant war. Dawn before conclave found the city quiet, too quiet. Rowan ordered double rations of bread, delivered to lines to keep small folk home, yet squares still bustled, curiosity outpacing hunger. Faith banners hung limp in no wind. Rose banners fluttered faint. Inside the Sept of Baelor, benches filled with conclave delegates. Lady Anya Wainwood for Vale, Lord Edric Dane for Dorne, Lord Tytos Blackwood for Riverlands, Maester Vyman on behalf of Stormland's caretakers, Lady Olenna for Reach, Sir Kevin for Westerlands, and of course, the King for Crown. Faith sighed, arrayed in white and gray. The sparrow centered. Wildfire barrels, now reduced to 5, sat outside under heavy guard awaiting loading onto river barge at dusk, symbol of progress. Tommen opened with speech about unity, referencing Lantern Knight. Oz gentle. Sparrow responded, voice echoing. He spoke of corruption, idol worship of power, need for hearts to break free from golden yoke. Some nodded. Others frowned. Discussion turned to disarmament. The Sparrow demanded equal disarmament of gold cloaks. Tommen offered phased reduction, but insisted Faith forfeit right to independent army. Stalemate brewed. Lady Olenna proposed compromise. Faith may retain unarmed order of peacekeepers, robed not armored, answerable to joint council. Sparrow countered with rhetorical parable of wolf and shepherd. Marguerite, seated unvoiced, gently reminded him, shepherds need not carry spears if wolves learn law. Laughter rippled, tension eased. They broke for midday meal, plain fare by decree. Broth, barley bread, apples. Delegates filed into cloister garden. Tommen lingered inside nave, studying stained glass warrior whose sword tip touched fiery halo. Colors shifted as clouds drifted outside. Sudden vibration shivered marble beneath feet. Low rumble, growing. Candles quivered. Tommen frowned. Rumble became roar. Distant blast rocked building. Shrill screams erupted outside. Rowan burst in, face ash gray. Warehouse. Second explosion. Green fire again. A guard sprinted up aisle, panting. Barrels under escort. They, gone off, more remain in crypts. The Sparrow strode toward Tommen, expression blank. The gods have spoken, he whispered. Tommen stepped back. What have you done? Cleansed unfaithful, the Sparrow answered, almost gently. Fires of purgation already sweep dock. By dusk, flames will reach Red Keep, scour sin. Shock froze Tommen half-breath, then fury snapped. You murdered innocents for doctrine. He turned, shouting orders. Evacuate conclave delegates to keep. Deploy bucket lines. Recall Tyrell host. Valen drew sword, guarding retreat. Faith brothers moved to bar path, Cersei's warning echoing. Rowan barked for crossbows. The nave erupted. Harriers swung cudgels at Tyrell guards. Steel rang. Tommen grabbed Maiden statue for cover as mason dust rained. Rowan hauled him toward side passage. Green light flickered through high windows. Wildfire plume visible beyond walls. City's nightmare born anew. Escape became maze. Smoke rose in corridors. Panicked worshippers stampeded. Valen carved path. Shield fending blows. Twice they passed dead, trampled. Near east transept. Septa Isabel blocked with drawn dagger, eyes aflame. Valen disarmed her. Rowan bound hands. At last they spilled onto street where Tyrell knights rallied. The Sparrow, still inside, called throngs to stand ground. Many did. Bells rang. The riot Tommen feared now reality, fueled by hellfire. Through chaos Tommen led delegates toward Red Keep. Flames reflected in black water, painting river a writhing serpent. At Mudgate, buckets already hauled. Barrels of sand rolled. Tyrell and gold cloaks cooperated, dousing sparks before they leapt. Rowan's scouts reported wildfire confined near docks. Beldakar's plastered walls again slowed spread. But wind shifted, sparks riding toward densely packed shops. Tommen ordered demolition of row houses to create firebreak. Carpenters felled timbers, explosions of mundane powder flattened lanes. Hours passed in haze of smoke and screams, but city refused to burn whole. Through courage, accident, maybe mercy. Night fell. Fires glowed dim to sullen embers. Casualty tallies climbed beyond 100, but below city-ending horrors. The Sparrow retreated decept with dwindling harriers, barricading doors. He issued proclamations through horns. The purge would continue come dawn. The realm stood upon blade of fanatical ruin. Inside Red Keep's war room, Tommen dressed in soot-stained mail, face streak. Rowan laid siege plan. Tyrell host circle sept, bombards from guild breach walls, capture Sparrow, present for trial. Kevin argued for swift arrow through window to end him quick. Marguerite suggested leaflets over city denouncing faith as false. Cersei urged torch to sept, regardless cost. Better ablaze once than forever threaten. Tommen listened. gaze drifting to lantern he kept from vigil night. Unbroken though oil spent. After long silence, he spoke. No more wildfire, no more martyrs. We take him alive, but not with cannon nor flame. We starve madness of witnesses. We evacuate district, cut off food, water. Faith may pray, but without flock his pulpit empties. Rowan frowned. Siga within city risks disease. Then we supply medicine, only through our lines. If sparrows surrender, they live. If sparrow uses fire, he immolates only his zealots, not innocents. Olenna scratched chin. A slow noose. Public grows weary of smoke. They may accept. Cersei scoffed, but withheld argument. At dawn, horns sounded across capital. The crown declared quarantine of Sept district. Gold cloaks erected barricades. Tyrell Siga lines formed second ring. All civilians offered safe passage out. Many fled. Faith loyalists remained, chanting psalms. The sparrow addressed barricade. Water of the seven flows within. But wells inside district soon fouled by ash and salt. Days passed. No flame burst. Hunger gnawed. Rowan allowed septons to scaffold messages of truce. Some harriers deserted by night. Slipping out disguised as beggars, accepted crown bread, renounced militant. The sparrow's numbers shrank. On seventh day, a silent procession emerged from Sept doors. Children first, then women, songs gone hoarse. Crown physicians treated them. The next day, sick and wounded staggered out. Tommen walked among them, offering water. Each gesture chipped at myth of tyrant king. Finally, on 10th day, Brother Malden approached lines waving white cloth cut from altar cloth. He surrendered, declaring Sparrow held last circle of zeal. Maybe 30. Wildfire stores inside catacomb emptied of fuses. Tommen demanded unconditional surrender. Midnight bells answered. Heavy doors opened. Sparrow walked out alone, robes frayed, eyes blazing with mixture of defeat and conviction. I stood ready to burn for truth, he said softly when Tommen met him beyond barricade. Yet truth came burning from within my own ranks. Flames consume themselves when starved of fuel. Tommen said, if truth is flame, let justice be water. He ordered irons clasped. Not rough, but firm. Sparrow offered wrists without struggle. Trial set in ruined throne room. Window shards glittering in ash sunlight. Delegates of realm presided. Evidence stacked. Confessions, fuses, assassins. The Sparrow defended doctrine, but admitted wildfire plot. If it saved souls. Verdict: guilty of treason, heresy, murder. Sentence: life immurement to silent monastery on Skagos, beyond reach of crowds or altar. Some demanded blood. Tommen refused. Let him live, and watch realm heal beyond his sermon. Within months, Faith Militant disbanded by charter of Septfall. Wildfire stock destroyed at sea. The conclave ratified Crown Faith Concord. Faith free to preach, forbidden arms, Crown to fund hospitals and schools. Gold cloaks reduced but professionalized. Tyrell Army escorted relief wagons to rebuild dock wards. Lantern Vigil became annual festival called Night of Mercy. Songs of Cub King matured into ballads of Lion of Lanterns. Cersei grew hair long again, silver threads streaking gold, seldom leaving keep but advising counsel with tempered pride. Rowan served as hand until death by spring chill years later. Olenna returned to reach, thorns sharpened, tales of Boy King softening her scowl. As autumn wind rattled leaves across courtyards once stained by fear, Tommen often climbed battlements at dusk, looking over city lights, not wildfire, but thousands of humble lamps glowing in windows, reflecting on river. He wondered how many battles remained unseen in hearts he could never visit. How many sparks still glimmered behind sermons and banners. Yet rows of lamplight shimmered like measureless constellations, each flicker small but persistent. And Tommen, grown taller, broader, yet still youthful, breathed deep that vision, feeling neither child nor pawn but king wrought from mercy, and tempered in flame he refused to wield. Someday, storms would rise again, Crowns ever drew thunder. But tonight, lanterns reigned. And the city, scarred, stubborn, serenely alive, breathed with him beneath a sky washed clean of green fire, awaiting nothing more urgent than another steady dawn. Yeah. Gently. The first snows reached King's Landing on the morning Tommen's 14th name day. A shy flurry that melted upon the bricks yet thrilled every child south of the Blackwater. From the battlements of Maegor's Holdfast, the king watched white motes whirl above a city that had never quite believed winter would come this far. The breath that left his lips rose in clear clouds, ghost-like reminders of the nights he and Myrcella once spent chasing candles through secret corridors before the weight of rule turned corridors into arteries of state. Somewhere below, a chorus of street urchins was singing the lantern lullaby, their young voices piping through the crisp air. Each verse celebrated the night the city's lamps had outshone wildfire. Each refrain ended with the same line, "No crown so bright as mercy." Tommen no longer blushed when he heard it, but the word still felt too large, like a cloak waiting for shoulders not yet grown. Behind him, the clack of Rowan's walking staff announced the hand's arrival. The old man claimed the staff for a lingering ache in his hip, though Tommen suspected he wielded it more to punctuate advice than to support failing bones. Rowan halted beside the king, surveying rooftops glazed with fleeting frost. "Snow is an honest herald," he said. "It tells all folk the same truth. Highborn or low, firewood will soon command better coin than gemstone." He offered a small smile. "You could set a precedent, your grace, by gifting a cart of pine to every alley." "We will," Tommen answered without hesitation, and the vow felt natural after years of breadlines, lantern vigils, and school roofs patched by royal decree. "Have the sawyers in the Kingswood double their quotas. We can spare the coin. Ships from the Arbor brought a second harvest tax this week." Rowan inclined his head. "I will draft the writ. Meanwhile, the envoy from Old Town awaits your leisure. He bears letters from the High Tower and, so rumor says, from the Citadel's conclave." "See." Tommen breathed the cold once more before stepping inward. "If Old Town brings tidings, they are seldom idle gossip. Let us hear them." Snowflakes tumbled across his hair, and for a heartbeat, he remembered the year Joffrey taunted him for chasing down a single drifting flake, claiming it was the last the city would ever see. How quickly things changed. The faith Militant had fallen. Wildfire had dwindled, and now snow teased the south like a falcon's shadow above a field. He followed Rowan through arched stone passages, past tapestries depicting the Lantern Night, to the solar where the envoy waited. Ser Boris Hightower stood when the king entered. His cloak embroidered with the green beacon flame of his house. He bowed low, the weight of chainmail creaking. "Your Grace, Old Town sends regards in good faith. The conclave has concluded its readings of the sun and moon, and the archmaesters whisper that the long night stirs again. Perhaps within years, perhaps within generations. Yet they also dispatch a more earthly plea." He passed a sealed tube bearing the red wax signature of the Citadel. "Maester Valen proclaims your lantern charter an example worth exporting. They ask for permission to copy its statutes and distribute them to lesser septs from the Shield Islands to the Fingers." Rowan accepted the scroll, glancing to Tommen. The king nodded. "Grant them rights. If mercy can travel faster than cold, let it." He turned to Boris. "And your house? I do not doubt your lord uncle adds his thoughts." "See." Boris's expression tightened. News carried lines deeper than winter winds. "My uncle writes in concern." Ships sailing out of the stepstones report banners bearing a kraken with wings. Calls himself king on the salt throne and the sky besides. Euron of the Isles lives, and his black wind flies now with Valyrian steel figurehead. Fisherfolk vanish along the southern capes. "My uncle begs the realm to raise beacons should the Tommen's chest weighed heavier with each word. Euron's rumors had drifted north for seasons. This sounded like confirmation. "We will keep watch. The Red Wine fleet repairs from last year's storms, but our harbor still holds 30 warships. If Euron sails close, we will light the beacons and send iron to greet iron." He dismissed Boris with thanks and gestures of bread and salt. When the envoy had gone, Tommen faced Rowan. Have the dockyards accelerate refits. The storm season ends in 3 moons. By then, I want 10 new galleys launched. Rowan pursed his lips. Wood for galleys and for hearths? The forests will complain. No. Forests do not bleed. Tommen walked toward the hearth where flames gnawed fragrant logs. If Ironborn raid the Reach, Tyrell harvests fail, and the city starves regardless. He met Rowan's searching gaze. Better axes in the Kingswood than axes at farmstead doors. The hand inclined his head. I will allocate funds. He shifted, eyes narrowing. Yet threats south may be simpler than those north. Lady Arya Stark's ravens speak of dead men walking beyond the wall. And the wall itself stands fractured near Eastwatch, too slow to mend with dwindling night's watch hands. Yun. The thought chilled Tommen more than snow. Letters from the north arrived every fortnight, each darker than the last. Bran Stark scribbled warnings of white shadows, Tormund Giantsbane reporting giant clans migrating south again. Ravens returning frostbitten. The realm still whispered of old tales, but tales became portents when matched by Archmaester's sky readings. We cannot send an army to the wall with winter closing, Tommen said. Yet we can send what the watch needs: glass candles, obsidian, healers. Tonight, summon the Alchemists' Guild. Ask what remains of Dragonfire stock. No wildfire. Only the old dusty candles Pyromancer Farrar claims once held spells for warmth. If superstition comforts them, let them have it. Rowan could not hide his skepticism but nodded, pen scratching across parchment as he followed Tommen out. The coming fortnight slipped into routine. Snow dustings that never lasted, harbor cries thick with gulls, scrolls from the Citadel praising the new sclerosis cure discovered in royal-funded infirmaries. The people too prepared for solemn merriment. Winter's first moon festival approached, a remnant of Andal tradition rarely practiced this far south. Tommen declared 3 days of open markets, and blanketed the poorest streets with woven rush mats, so barefoot children might dance without frostbite. On the first evening, lanterns carved of thin ice, an artisan's novelty imported from Bravos, were mounted atop the outer wall. Each contained an oil cup. Flames flickered through translucent cages that dripped slowly as they burned, like miniature melting castles. The sight drew gasps even from hardened veterans posted at the gate. Tommen strolled the festival incognito, garbed in drab cloak, followed by only 2 gold cloaks. He purchased roasted chestnuts, offered a copper to a girl who juggled acorns for coin, and paused by a booth where a septon read aloud the mother's prayer while heating kettles of spiced milk for whomever would listen. Mercy. Small and practical, breathing amid winter's bite, he left a silver dragon in the offering bowl, hoping it would stretch the milk farther than prayers. Returning past the riverfront, Tommen's glance snagged upon a crudely painted sign nailed to a beam. The Green Truth, weekly broadside. The pamphlet displayed sketches, an ironborn ship with wings, a wolf made of ice, and the last panel a suspiciously lion-like cub, pulled between swords and stars. Beneath the art lay verses, mocking kings too gentle for iron times. Tommen requested a copy. The printer's lad hesitated, then sold for half price once Tommen's identity gleamed in the torchlight. The king concealed it within cloak folds until he reached his solar. Rowan arrived soon after to discuss harbor levy, but found Tommen bent over the pamphlet. More scurrilous ink, Rowan muttered. The price of free parchment. It might be also price of ignoring fear, Tommen replied. Fear writes louder than hope when snow falls. He traced the sketch of the cub. Order scribes to prepare our own broadside, not rebuttal, education. Explain where grain ships stand, who finances new stoves for orphanages, how fishermen can claim bait subsidies. Wrap it in humor if they can. Let truth compete with spectacle. Rowan sighed, though pride flickered in his eyes. If we must war with quills, we shall. By winter's heart, streets echoed with the clack of wood overshoes, and the Braziers Guild hammered round the clock forging portable braziers for every 10th house, subsidized by crown coin. Jesters at taverns declared the boy king more generous than the maiden herself, though cynics muttered that purse strings loosen whenever the crown fears riot. Tommen heard both whispers and carried them like stones in a river. Small burdens, smoothed by time. News from the Reach darkened. Urin's black wind had sacked the arbor's outlying vineyards, torching casks meant for festival wine. Victims found nailed to masts wore masks of weirwood bark. Symbols none understood. Lord Paxter Redwine implored naval aid. Tommen convened war council. Sir Talbert Tyrell, representing the Reach fleet, Admiral Valerian representing the Crown's modest navy, and an unexpected guest, Asha Greyjoy, older sister to the infamous Kraken King. Captured the year prior by Tyrell Patrol, she had lingered in cell under dull iron until Rowan daringly suggested leverage. They met in a damp storeroom converted to council chamber. Maps spread across barrels. Asha, shackled but proud, leaned over parchment lines like a cat surveying coastline. "My brother hunts storms," she said, tracing finger along the Mander estuary. "Not gold. He seeks something screams." Her eyes flashed. "A dragon perhaps, or a god. You will not catch him chasing him where he's been. Sail where he might need blood next. The mouths of the Honeywine, where rumors claim monks excavated a Valerian horn." Admiral Valerian arched brow. "We send galleys to every rumor?" "We send one," Tommen said, "with Asha aboard. Offer her parole if she guides us true. A lesser risk than waiting blind." Asha's grin returned, sharp as salt wind. Terms were inked. A deck cabin, 2 guards, a secondary mast chain, if she attempted revolt. She accepted with a shrug, proclaiming the chain lighter than her brother's shadow. Rowan cautioned Tommen afterward. "Trusting Ironborn is trusting a shark to smell only 1 drop of blood." Tommen answered, "Courtesy is a loan, remember? And even sharks spit hooks when promised meat elsewhere." Then, within a fortnight, the galley Azure Bride set sail south with Asha aboard, and gold cloaks disguised as sailors. Letters traveled ahead to the Hightower. "Sharpen harbor defenses. Expect guest of dubious loyalty." Meanwhile, Tommen kept eyes north. A raven from Castle Black reported the Night's Watch down to fewer than 600 men. Giants roamed East Valleys. The wildlings, though allied to Starks, suffered fever that maesters could not cure because herbs had frozen in north tunnels. Tommen dispatched healers, barrels of dried oranges for scurvy prevention, and, controversially, 50 Tyrell archers as assistants, though many in council argued arrows would silence need faster than oranges. The king's orders remained unchanged. One windswept morning, Cersei joined Tommen on the castle's highest walk. Something she did rarely now that gray laced her hair like threads of powdered moonlight. She leaned beside him, gloved hands gripping the iced merlin. "I dreamed of wildfire again. But this time, it was cold," she murmured. Green frost spreading over water, turning ships to statues. He noted the tremor in her voice, different from the iron pride she once wielded. She continued, "Your father would have answered these threats with battle cries. I cannot decide if your kindness will save or doom us." Tommen did not look away from the city rooftops. "It is no kindness to ignore steel," he said. "But I will not let fear choose my sword's direction." He paused. "Mother, do you regret not burning them when you had power?" He meant the sparrow and his followers, but beneath the question lay deeper roots. She exhaled slowly, clouding the cold air between them. "I regret many things, but ashes answer fewer questions than living mouths." She turned to go. "Just remember, a cub that shows teeth too late is a carcass." That night, a series of horns blared across the harbor. Signal lights from watchtowers flickered red. Pirates, or worse, had breached the galleys. Tommen hurried to the parapets. Fires dotted the bay where 3 fishing crafts blazed. Yet beneath the panic, the royal fleet responded like seasoned stags. Ballistae launched. Harbor chains raised. A warship flying unfamiliar striped sails fled south, trailing smoke from its stern. Admiral Valerian's flagship pursued. By dawn, a captured hull was towed back. Crest of a thunderbolt, not Kraken. Sailors confessed under brine and lash. Sell sails hired by Lees, purses lined with Bravosi coin. Their orders were to test harbor defenses. Rowan studied the prisoners. Lys seldom acts alone. Bravos seldom hires fools. Someone funds distraction. Euron or another, Tommen mused. Either way, our walls held. He decreed the sell sails sentenced to rebuild the burned wharfs under guard. Labor, as atonement. Some lords scoffed, yet dockworkers praised the justice. 6 weeks later, a raven black as coal arrived from the Stormlands. Its message, sealed by Lady Cassana Estermont, bore dire news. A storm surge had unearthed stone ruins along Cape Wrath. Within the ruins, watchers had glimpsed pale figures crawling at low tide, skeletons wreathed in seaweed, dragging blackened chests inland before vanishing with dusk. Fishermen refused to sail. Stranger still, some claimed the figures chanted in Valyrian. Tommen summoned Maester Orlin, scholar of dead tongues. When Orlin deciphered the phonetics, he paled. They chant, "Rue carry his gifts." The Maester's finger traced a sigil sketched by Estermont scouts, a kraken skull inside 7-point star. Rowan whispered, "Euron merges fear of faith and fear of sea." Clever. The council resolved to send a reconnaissance host, 100 Stormlander spears under Sir Warwick Baratheon, dozen crown ravens to record. Tommen limited the force. He could not expose capital's garrison. He ordered wheat reserves moved inland, fearing coastal raids. While preparations unfolded, messengers from Old Town arrived breathless. Asha's led expedition had intercepted Euron's scouts at the Honeywine and captured a horn of black stone, carved with glyphs that bled fresh when touched. The Hightower scholars believed it Dragonbinder, ancient horn for taming scaled beasts. Asha insisted Euron expected to trade it to shadow priests in Ashai for powers none grasp. She demanded audience with the king, promising more secrets. Asha arrived in chains escorted by twin Tyrell guards. Frost clung to cloak hem. In throne room, she knelt not from respect, but to mock courtesy. "The horn is cursed," she began. "Blown thrice, it kills the blower and binds beasts to the master holding chain. My brother seeks dragons, but none answer his call. Still the horn shrieks like storm. I offer you this, break it." Break it. Scatter shards in all seas, and the krakens drink. Tommen eyed the horn displayed upon velvet. Edges rippled like frozen fire, binding runes glimmering faintly. "Why help us?" he asked. She shrugged. "Euron would drown every isle. I prefer mine not aflame. Free me, grant me a ship, and I sail back to the isles with word that the south is false path. He will turn east, and you gain seasons of peace." Rowan leaned in, voice low. "Risky. Yet destroying horn without her counsel might release darker magic." Tommen descended steps, approached relic. Its surface pulsed, humming of far-off wind. He spoke softly so only horn and hall ghosts might hear. "I will not wield fear to defeat fear." He turned to Asha. "We will break the horn at sea with Valyrian steel and bury pieces beneath castle rocks. You will sail not to Pike but to Bear Island as envoy. There you'll meet Lady Lyanna Mormont and tell her the Isles can choose kinship over chaos. If you lie, her bears will know. Her bears will know." Asha laughed, a sharp bark, yet her eyes softened. "You bargain like a Greyjoy cub. Very well." She rose. "If bears eat me, at least I die on land, not in my brother's nightmare." Weeks later, word arrived. Bear Island accepted parley. Asha's letter, blunt but earnest, described nights by hearth where little Lady Mormont debated with words sharper than kraken hooks. Whether peace would sprout no one could say, but the sea fell quieter, reefs free of black sails for a time. In the capital, winter's longest night descended. Churches throbbed with hymns, taverns with laughter, alleyways with hush of snow turned slush. Tommen hosted a vigil atop the throne room steps, candles arranged to shape the sigil of the seven interwoven with crown and rose. He spoke little, letting silence honor those lost to fire and frost. The crowd's applause at the vigil's end was soft yet steady, like snowfall layering promise over wounds. Shortly after, Sir Warwick's host returned from Cape Wrath bearing grim trophies, a chest filled with sea-soaked parchments containing prayers to the drowned god scribbled in High Valyrian, mixed with fragments of the faith's catechism. No undead had been caught, but prints in sand showed skeletal feet bearing iron chains. The maesters burned parchments. Tommen had the ashes mixed into mortar for the new city infirmary wall, a silent emblem that fear could become foundation. Throughout the next moons, scouts reported Euron's longships steering east around the Jade Gates, far from Westeros. Tyrell's sailors chased few stragglers, capturing vessels whose decks reeked more of fear than salt. The horn shards rested now beneath Storm's End, sealed inside a stone vault that bore 3 sigils. Kraken struck through, lantern shining, mother's palm outstretched. But cold did not retreat. The wall's ravens grew sporadic. Wildling fever spread. Obsidian shipments delayed by pack ice. Tommen convened Grand Council of Lords inside the Queen's ballroom. Stark emissaries, Greyjoy envoys, Tyrells, Martells, even Prince Trystane, newly come of age, each brandishing grievances and hopes. Many had not shared roof since Robert's reign. They argued from sunrise to candle gutter, about grain quotas, iron tariffs, men for the watch, faith schools and Dorne. Voices rose, old wounds reopened. When temper peaked, Tommen stood, unsheathed his sword. A plain steel blade, not ceremonial. He laid it flat upon the map table, the clatter stunning debate into stillness. "My sword defends those who cannot lift one," he said evenly. "If each of you will not send men north, then you will send food, cloaks, maesters, children's laughter. Anything that tells night we still breathe. Refuse, and your gold will rot in emptied halls when dark comes south. This table is not large enough for pride and survival both. Choose." Silence deepened. Then Lady Olenna, frailer yet remains Thorn, nodded. "The Reach will seed greenhouses on Skagos. Roses bloom even on ice if tended." Prince Trystane pledged sandsteel weapons of dragonglass from abandoned mines near Skyreach. The Vale committed falconers to carry ravens when cold killed normal flight. Slowly, each banner offered part. Even those who once served Sparrow, penitent. The council ended with quill strokes, not sword. With spring's first thaw, Tommen rode north accompanied by Balin, Maester Orlin, and a retinue of craftsmen. They crossed rivers gorged with meltwater, villages where stoves bore lantern sigils carved amateurishly by children. At Winterfell, Sansa Stark greeted them, her rule over shattered north patient, but unflinching. Together, they rode to Last Hearth, where glimpses of pale shapes haunted tree lines until dragonglass tips on crossbow bolts discouraged watchers. In the nights they shared stories. Sansa spoke of songs their mother loved. Tommen offered tales of city bakers who fed faith spies without fear. Threads of realm rewove, knot by knot. At Castle Black, they found the watch gaunt yet defiant. Jon Snow had vanished on ranging months earlier. Some claimed he marched into lands of always winter-seeking parley. Ghost patrolled ramparts alone, white fur stained by wind. Tommen donated wagons of obsidian arrowheads, scrolls of lantern charter, and barrels of azure fire. A new alchemical mixture Beldekar, promised burned bright, but did not explode. He stood atop the wall, staring into swirl of snow beyond. Somewhere out there walked terrors cold as regret. Yet at his side stood Sansa, Balin, wildling healers, even a silent giant wearing child's lantern talisman around thick neck. The cub had grown into a king among many lights. Back south, letters chronicled transformation. Faith schools welcomed orphan girls to learn letters. Tyrell vineyards replanted after Kraken raid announced harvest twice expected. Asha brokered fragile pact for Northern Isles to supply mackerel for Night's Watch. Rowan dispatched fewer reprimands now. spending evenings teaching young maesters policy craft. Even Cersei, perhaps softened by winter, chaired committees for widow stipends, though she still scolded treasurers with lion's bite. On Tommen's 17th name day, the first true snowstorm in 70 years blanketed King's Landing. Yet hearths burned bright across all quarters. The Braziers Guild delivered warming braziers to flea-bottom doorsteps free of charge, funded by levy on luxury brothels, an irony that made Tommen smile. At dusk, he ascended the rebuilt tower where the High Septon once stood. The Sept of Baelor remained a shell, its skeleton preserved as memorial, but scaffolds clung to spires where artisans set colored glass panes anew. Images of lanterns, roses, wolves, and dragons, no single symbol ruling the light. From that height, Tommen saw the city glowing beneath snowfall, each lamp a seed defying darkness. The stranger in his dreams, the one who once held wildfire, now scattered sparks of gentler fire across rooftops. He raised a crystal lamp crafted by Lysine glassblowers, its core a single blue-white flame fed by alchemists' salts that would neither scald nor sputter even in blizzard wind. He lifted it high as bells rang. The light refracted, casting rainbow shards onto fresh snow, where children already sculpted makeshift direwolves and krakens to laugh at fear. Rowan appeared from stairwell, his staff softer on stone now that joints mended under Maester's elixirs. "The realm still wobbles, your grace," he said, "as any fledgling does." Tommen kept gaze on city, but a fledgling that learns to beat both wings, mercy and strength. He inhaled frosty air. "I once feared each day might be the last calm before fire. Now I fear wasting calm when it arrives. If night comes, we will stand, but until then, we will live." Below, lanterns swirled like constellations fallen to earth, a cartographer's dream reversed. Stars mapped by people, not the other way. Somewhere north, white shadows prepared march. Somewhere east, krakens searched for thunder. South, red sands shifted against old grudges. But amid those shifting pieces, mercy had found corners to bloom, and the bloom, though fragile, rooted deep. Tommen lowered the lamp, returning its glow to the balcony's alcove. Rowan noted how the flame's reflection danced in the king's eyes, steady, unwavering, no longer the wide eyes of a boy fearing thrones, but the measured gaze of a ruler who had learned to balance sword, lantern, and the silent weight of snow. Winter's script would continue to unfurl across the realm, yet he had written his opening lines in ink of mercy and tempered steel. And though storms howled beyond every horizon, their voices found no entry through walls lit by countless small flames, each one promising that dawn, however distant, would find them waiting, unafraid.